Good evening, everybody. With the time being 6 o'clock on October 10th, I'd like to call the Planning and Development Committee to order. Can I please have a roll call?
Solkaitis.
Here.
Calamares.
Here.
Hayleitner. Here. Bongard.
Here.
Bancroft.
Here.
Lencioni. Petrilla.
Here.
Warball.
Here.
Bessner.
Here.
Weber.
Here. Thank you very much. First of all, if nobody wants to stand up, we do have overflow rooms that you can go and sit down. I believe there's monitors, TVs, and there's also room downstairs as well, correct? Yeah. So I just want to make everybody aware of that, and you will all be able to ask questions. There'll be a format to where you can ask questions outside as well. But I'm going to start off with turning this over to the mayor for some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Good evening. I wanted to take a few moments this evening as this is a very exciting time for our city of St. Charles. We have an opportunity this evening to learn about two potential concepts for our riverfront space. A few things before I turn this meeting back over to Mr. Weber. This is very important for the City Council and the public and the media to understand we are not here to make a decision tonight, nor are the concepts you will hear tonight final plans. These are concepts that are subject to change in response to questions, requests, and comments raised by the City Council and the public. In fact, both developers have already taken some of the feedback from previous meetings to make revisions. I think it's important that we also review the timeline of a series of discussions and that they also be reiterated. You will hear a timeline again through staff this evening, and the timeline has also been shared via our website as well as social media. The origin of the request for concepts dates back to 2019 when the City Council conducted and approved a comprehensive plan amendment. This amendment is and has been available to the public since that time. The amendment included designating the former police station site as a catalyst site and recommended it be developed as mixed use but also maintain open space. In March 2020, the city started working on a request for concepts for redeveloping the site. In June of 2020, the city discussed issuing an RFP for the old police station site. However, due to impact and uncertainties related to the COVID pandemic, the City Council paused the process. At a City Council retreat workshop in September of 2021, the topic again was discussed, and the Council directed staff to move forward with a scaled-down request for concepts to allow for submittal of conceptual plans to encourage creativity and responses. The request for concepts was issued in November 2021, and in March 2022, the city received 4 proposals. These concepts were reviewed and discussed at a City Council workshop retreat in July 2022, and Council narrowed the concepts to the 2 we will discuss this evening. I want to add that in between these major milestones I just listed from 2019 to today, there have been multiple discussions in both Plan Commission and Planning and Development Committee meetings and plenty of press coverage about the project. I also think it is important to note that during this process and series of discussions, the outcomes were the same from both policy-making bodies, which included 2 mayors and many different council members. So the goals for this evening are as follows. You will hear from 2 developers the City Council has asked back out of the 4 submissions to discuss their concepts for this site. City Council members will ask questions, however, not get into full discussion of the concept this evening. Members of the public are always welcome to provide feedback. We ask that you provide very brief comments this evening and be mindful of comments that have already been stated by others. We hope that you will all take the opportunity to really learn about both concept plans. And for those who have sent letters and or emails, those have all been distributed to City Council members, and those will all be archived in the minutes from this evening and from conversations. After tonight, there will be more opportunities for the City Council to discuss and community to provide feedback during the next steps of the process. Please understand that the concepts before you will likely change as we continue to refine the components of the project with the needs of the community. I also would like to add that everyone up here on this dais has the interests of all St. Charles residents and businesses in mind, and they are always working to ensure the continued vitality of our city. Thank you, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Mayor. And once again, just to reiterate, there will be 0 decision made tonight on who is doing this development. With that being said, I'm going to turn over to staff. I'm going to first call up Russell Colby, our development director.
Good evening. Russell Colby, Community Development Director for the city. I'm going to provide a little bit of background on the comprehensive plan update from 2020 that the mayor referenced. So this discussion started when the city's police department moved to a new facility in 2019. The city did not have a need or purpose for reuse of the buildings, so there was discussion to look at alternate future uses for the property. And when we consider future uses for property, we refer to the comprehensive plan, which is the city's long-range policy guide. It's an advisory document for development. Plan is adopted by the city council with recommendation from the plan commission. The citywide plan that the city had from 2013 did not identify a future reuse of this property once the police station had moved. So in spring 2019, the council directed staff to initiate a process to update the comprehensive plan and identify a future use for the property. The process started with the plan commission, first looking at existing conditions of the property, then soliciting public input through an interactive open house and survey. Based on the information that was gathered during the process, draft recommendations were discussed and then recommended for approval by the Plan Commission. These draft recommendations were presented to the Planning and Development Committee first in February of 2020. And the amendment to the comprehensive plan proposed to add the former police station site to the downtown sub-area plan as a catalyst site. This is defined in the plan as an underutilized property where redevelopment could have a catalytic impact on the surrounding area. And the catalyst site plan that recommended open space along the riverfront and mixed-use redevelopment of the former police station property. So this plan was adopted following a public hearing in August of 2020. This image shows the land use plan that's part of the comprehensive plan amendment. This shows the land use areas geographically, the open space along the riverfront in green, the mixed-use area shown in the orange hatching, and the blue area is shown as an option for parking or potential residential use. Additionally, there was a plan called the Site Improvement Plan that identified important planning elements of the property. That includes a riverfront walkway, screening of utility uses, the potential location of a parking structure shown in the blue outline, identification of the historic landmarks that were within the area, and also some notes regarding public access and connectivity through the area and to the riverfront. So the request for concepts that was issued by the city, discussion on this began after the draft comprehensive plan amendment was presented. The city council developed this request for concept proposals based upon that information. So there was a workshop that was held in March of 2020 where the council discussed parameters of the RFP document, including what property to include, desired land uses, and objectives for a project. Based on the workshop, staff presented a draft RFP document for consideration in June of 2020 to the Planning and Development Committee. At that time, the committee decided to hold off on issuing the request for proposals document due to the uncertainty of the economic environment related to the pandemic. So the RFP then was not discussed again until September of 2021 when it was discussed during a city council retreat workshop. And during the discussion, the council recommended that the RFP be scaled down to a request for concepts, which would require less detail than formal proposals. And the intent of switching from a formal proposal to a concept proposal was to encourage more creativity in the responses from developers. And the council could then consider what was presented and decide how to proceed. So a draft request for concept proposals was presented to a P&D committee in October of 2021. And staff was directed to proceed with issuing the request for concepts. So this request was issued on November 15th, 2021. It was posted for approximately 120 days with responses due on March 15th, 2022. This slide lists the development objectives and requirements that were included with the request for concepts. And these are items that the City Council intended to evaluate when the proposals were presented. So this includes land use. It identified a preference for mixed-use development, which could include commercial, hospitality, and residential uses, with residential uses on upper floors. Consideration of developer qualifications, a track record of similar projects, the schedule for completion, quality architecture and design, considering the historic district and complementing the downtown architecture, Parking solutions, an interest in having parking be provided internal to the project, exceeding the minimums where possible and accommodating municipal parking needs, and consistency with the comprehensive plan. This would include the proposed use of the riverfront open space, the primary land uses identified, building scale, and parking. With that, I'll turn the presentation over to Derek Conley.
Thank you, Russ. Derek is our Economic Development Director.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm going to be picking up kind of the timeline from here and going over what the process has been for our review of the proposals. So that starts on March 15th of this year. We received 4 proposals from 4 different development firms. That would be Frontier Development, Murphy Development Group, T2 Capital Management, and Flaherty and Collins. Initially, staff did a review of all 4 of these proposals. Upon our review, we thought that there need to be some things that need to be clarified before sending the proposals to City Council. So we sent each developer some questions, just clarifying questions. With that, they were allowed to resubmit any site plans or any renderings that they wanted to, just to clarify what their project was. And that is what the council did see prior to the July 25th City Council workshop. And those documents are still available online. So on July 25th, we did have the City Council workshop to review and discuss all 4 proposals. At the conclusion of that meeting, each council member was asked what their feelings were about, if there were any preferred developers that came out of the discussion or the presentation. And not unanimously, however, I think there was general consensus that there were 2 developers and concepts that stuck out to the committee. And that would be Frontier Development and Murphy Development Group. Per the committee's request, they did want to see us invite back all of the developers just to give them an opportunity to present. So we did do that as a staff. We sent letters to each one of them asking them if they felt like they wanted to move forward. 2 of them that were not considered to be on the preferred list opted to not move forward, basically based on the comments given by the committee at that time. That kind of brings us to October 10th, which is, of course, today. We have the developers here, both Murphy Development Group and Frontier Development, to present to the committee. I know the chairman is going to go through this, but basically what we're looking for is 30 minutes of presentation and 30 minutes of questioning by each developer. In my presentation here, I do have a line that's basically signifying moving forward. So staff will put on the committee agenda for November 14th just a discussion for the proposals that we're going to see tonight. We think that this meeting could go a little bit long and probably don't have enough time, so we're opting for another meeting on November 14th. This will also allow a little bit of time for the committee to hear about the proposals and then go back to their constituents and get more input. And then next after that, I do have a TBD, which is selection of developer and concept. We do not have a date for that yet. That kind of depends on how this meeting and the next meeting unfolds. And then I do want to make this point because I do think it is very important that even if we do get down to where we are selecting a developer and a concept, that does not mean that the project is going to happen, and that does not mean that it's going to happen as it is presented tonight. There is an entire entitlement process that has to be done once a developer is selected. So if we get down to where we select a developer and a concept, that basically tells staff to work with that one firm, and then they have to go back through the entitlement process. So what does that look like? That means going through the Historic Commission, and then to the Planning Commission, and then Planning and Development Committee, and then of course on to Council. So that will also give the community an opportunity to provide more input on the project as they are presented. And then lastly, I just want to mention, because there has been some concerns about where is this information being stored on the website. It has always been available on the website, but I just want to clearly kind of put out where that is here. So if you were to go to the city website, you'll see the green box there that says City Studies and Initiatives. If you were to click on that box there, that will take you to this page. You'll click on Request for Concepts, Downtown Riverfront Property. If you click on that, it will take you to the page. And this is basically where all the documents that have been submitted will be stored on the website, including the proposals that are no longer being considered. With that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, staff, for the timeline. I think it was very relevant to show that the process where it's taken us so far. Obviously, highlighting the fact that we have been extremely transparent. We've been hiding nothing. We've been holding nothing back. Just wanted to, set the stage for that we have been very, very transparent. With that, I'm going to invite up Murphy Development to go ahead and begin their presentation. Whoever's speaking, please state your name and address so we have it for the record. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Weber. I'm Dave Ariola. I'll be representing Murphy Development Group on this project. And I thought first we'd start off just introducing who's here. Originally, our team included White, our architect, and since then we've added O'Neill and Lincoln Property Company to even out the team. So I'll start with John Murphy.
I'm John Murphy, founder of Murphy Development Group. Murphy Development Group is a fully integrated real estate services platform. We have properties that we've developed, own and manage throughout the United States. We're in currently 17 different states with a portfolio value of just under $1.4 billion. We, basically analyze, collect data based on programs, and then we execute and provide equity and debt for these projects. I think that you'll find that the presentation we're doing tonight has a sensitivity on being economically feasible. It's absent a hotel. We own and have developed several hotels throughout the country. We maintain an open perspective to that, but given the current environment, whether it's post-COVID or the financing markets today, we're not sure that it's an economically feasible endeavor at this point. That could change over time dramatically, obviously, but we don't see it as such. But we've worked very closely with this group. We feel that the presentation that we're presenting here is economically feasible. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Dave.
Good evening. My name is Floyd Anderson. I'm with White & Company. White is an 80-year-old firm here in the Chicagoland area. We do design, engineering, and construction. Our role on this project will be the architectural and engineering group. Myself and my colleague, Richard Van Zyl, head up our commercial development design group at White, and we're happy to be here and happy to be a part of this.
Hey, good evening. Chris Cable of W. O'Neill Construction. We are, in 2025, we'll be celebrating our 100th year in business. We are a 100% employee-owned company. As of this point, 80% of our work comes from repeat clients, of which Murphy is absolutely one, completing the 8,000 Skokie project in Lincoln Avenue a couple years back. We owe our continued success to building strong relationships with our partners and the communities that we serve. Thank you. Great. So 2 years ago, Floyd came to me. He had worked a little bit on the library here, or tried to. And so there's going to be a project in downtown Skokie. Are you interested? And I said, well, I'm sorry, downtown St. Charles. I said, well, let me go look at the site. So I did. At the time I lived in the city, I lived there for 30 years. Lo and behold, a year later, I live here now in Campton Hills. My wife and son are here. So we're very excited to be presenting on this. I have a vested interest in seeing this project successfully done. So we're really happy. Is the microphone on?
Yes.
Is this on?
Yes.
Is that better? So we'll start. Let me make sure this works. We wanted to give you a little background about how we arrived at the program and the building we're proposing. So we had a couple guiding principles. We started with, we wanted a feasible project. The development environment couldn't have changed more than it has since this RFP came out. We believe we could do this project today, we could finance it, and we don't need a subsidy. And we've been working hard with our team to make sure that can happen. Two, we wanted to maintain future flexibility, mostly for the city. So we are only using the one site, the police station site, which leaves the other two sites open for complementary development at some point in the future, regardless of what's done here. Partnership, we met with the city. We really tried hard to incorporate what the comments that we've seen already, and we've been very open. We've done a lot of public-private partnersps, including 150 units in downtown Skokie that we just finished with this team and others. And, you know, that was a huge TIF deal. If we wanted to add parking, we've designed this building, so if we wanted to add a second story of parking, so we have public parking, we could do that. We're open to any of that. A couple design principles, we felt it important to really appropriately scale this building. And we're going to go through that and show you. And we had a couple principles on that. We wanted to preserve views from the community and preserve the wells, which we've heard is important. So we've designed around both of those right now. We also thought there's a tremendous opportunity here to really enhance the existing features. You have the river, you have public space, so we wanted to add public green space and really embrace and connect the Riverwalk. Right now, there's really no reason to walk from Batavia Park to downtown St. Charles. This, we think, will greatly enhance it and make it much, much more inviting. And we want to integrate all the public monuments that are there now. So we're not touching any of the existing public monuments. We're keeping all of them. There's only one that's attached to the building that will relocate. So we came up with a program, and that program comes down to 141 units, actually, of multifamily, restaurant, retail, and parking. And the entire project, the design, is driven by the parking. And it's driven by surface parking because we don't think we could do it feasibly with structured parking. So that's where we came up. The entire design is driven by that. I'm going to ask, so we thought we'd give you a little context of how we decided to do this. So I'll let you go through it first.
Hi, Rich Van Zyl from White & Company, working with Floyd on the design of this project. So this is a diagram that shows our thinking, how we arrived at our solution. So the two yellow lines here represent view corridors, which we thought were very important to preserve on Cedar Street and State Avenue. So as you're looking to the west, north is to the right on this plan, you could always see toward the river. The second two important points are these red dots. One is the building we're in right now, which is the tower element of City Hall, and the second one is the Potawatomi statue. Those are very important, prominent monuments that we wanted to preserve. You know, when you Google St. Charles, the first thing that pops up is the tower of the building that we're standing in. So we wanted to use that as a framework to orient our building. Third thing is you have a few buildings back here, transformers, city utility buildings that we would call undesirable. So we placed our L-shaped scheme. It relates to this axis of the tower and the statue. So we create an L-shaped scheme that wraps around that. The higher bar is located here to shield the undesirable views of the city municipal buildings from things that you'd see looking from downtown. And then the lower bar is oriented along Riverside Avenue to, again, preserve views from the residences to the east. The last thing we want to do is create a continuous open space along the river. Expand on what you have. The green space that you have, we're going to expand it, use the existing geometry, use the existing monuments, and design something new that flows with what you have and just expand it and enhance it. And that's what we based our plan. So here's a view. You're hovering above the Fox River. Here's the building that we're in right now. The existing sculpture, the Freedom Walk, the rain garden, all that stays. We use the existing geometry to start to lay out these paths along the riverfront, add more places for stopping and congregating, open lawn, a sloped lawn that starts to hide our parking garage, and then we actually have a proposed theater seating area that is along this axis here that as you're sitting on it, you'll see in a view that looks back to the tower. So we're going to walk you on a tour as we float around. I'm going to look at plans, and then we're going to finish with a short animation of what this all looks like. So now you're on Route 64 Main Street looking back, the Hotel Bakers to your left. Here's again the municipal tower, and here's the L-shaped building that kind of the arms open out to the river and frame views back toward downtown. The long bar also takes advantages of views to the north and looking over to Potawatomi Park and all the dense trees and forests that you'd see from those views. So we thought a lot about views and how we oriented the building to maximize not only views for the residents of the building, but also people in town looking back to the project, so it wasn't blocking things, or strategically it was blocking things that you might not want to see. So now you're on Riverside Avenue looking north. The parking lot for the municipal building that's just behind us is to the left in this image. So it's a 5-story building along Riverside and a 7-story building perpendicular to that. And again, that was intentional to preserve the views to the east and then use the taller volume to create better views to the north, looking over the park and looking over the municipal service buildings. There's a retail space at this corner. That could be a small coffee shop or a small cafe. And then the entrance to the residential portion is at the northeast corner. Now you're moving around, you're kind of, the rain garden that exists today and the Freedom Walk would be directly behind you. This is that stage that's built into this hillside that we've created that not only gives you a little bit of an elevated lawn to sit on and look out over the river, but it also hides our parking. So we have surface parking, but we've been very strategic about hiding it and shielding it so that you don't see it from the river and any events and activities that might be going on in the river. So this stage here and seating would be open to the public. We can work with the city to develop programming for that and how it could be used. And this is a view of what it would look like on the seating. We oriented this for 2 reasons. One, we didn't want to face it directly west because thinking late afternoon concerts, you'd be looking directly into the sun. But when you orient it south, it has this great framed view of the municipal tower. So when you're sitting there listening to a concert, you're looking over the stage, looking right at the tower of the Art Deco building that we're in right now. Now you've moved around to the building. We have a restaurant planned at the corner. Again, this would be a restaurant space. David, you're talking to some people about that already? Yes.
We have a letter of interest from a restaurant group that we included in the packet. Again, until you really have timing, it's not a letter of intent, but we have some interest.
But the idea is that that restaurant would spill out into this outdoor public space, outdoor dining. Again, people can spill from the concert that might be going on or just walking along the river, have a place to stop, have a drink, sit with their friends, and just enjoy this outdoor public amenity space. Then here's a view from the river, as if you were on your kayak floating around. Here's the Potawatomi statue. Again, that was located at the, intentionally so that it created a framed view of that and it integrated well with the public plaza that we're proposing, and then, again, adjacent to the restaurant. So we'll get into some of these plans. Like we said, we're only proposing on the police station site right now. We looked at these other parcels. They have their challenges. This parcel here is only about 110 feet wide, so to do parking, efficient parking on that, it makes it very difficult, so we kind of gravitated toward just using this site. Same with parcel A. It's a little narrow. It's tough to get the right amount of parking on, and we know that if you were going to build on any of these areas, you'd have to create more parking. And like Dave said, our scheme is really driven by the number of parking spaces we could get as a surface solution on site. That dictated how many units we proposed in the building. These were just some the earlier concepts, but you can see they all preserved the view corridors. We looked at going to those other sites, but it just didn't make, it didn't work out, and want to do something feasible, as Dave said. And then all the existing monuments, like we said, we are preserving the tower, the reflection statue, the Freedom Walk, the Potawatomi statue. All of our pathways integrate with what's out there, and it's just an extension of what you already have. Here's a view from 3rd and State looking downstate. As you know, the topography rises as you go east, so you are looking down the road, down to the river, but we wanted to preserve those views. Here's the height of the municipal center at about 84 feet, and the height of our 5-story bar is about 57 feet, so we'd be below that, and this was all done intentionally to keep some of that height down. So then here's our actual site plan. Again, municipal center, this L-shaped building, 5 stories along Riverside, and then 7 stories as it is parallel to that. At the second level, there's amenity space for the residents of the building to have their outdoor space, new fire pit, some shade structures that would be amenity space off of the internal amenities for the building. This portion here is open to the sky. It's surface parking for the building. So we have a mix of parking spaces that are open to the sky as well as underneath the tower and this deck. This is that outdoor space where it spills out of the restaurant, and then this is that sloped lawn that hides our surface parking behind this wall, and the grass slopes up to it so you don't really see what's going on. Number 11 is where the municipal well is right now. We're still working through details on exactly where that's located once we get a true survey, but we will incorporate that into the lawn, landscape around it, so we're not building on top of it. It's free and clear, and we can just work around it when we get into that level of detail.
So we want to be clear about the parking. We tried hard to make it, to enhance it as much as possible. So right now you have 236 parking spaces on the surface lots. Our plan is going to add 132 spaces to that, and the police station parcel has about 69 spaces, and we'll wind up with a net loss of about 65 spots public. Now, our plan here is we designed the parking, it's about a 1.4 ratio for the residents, and that was done in concert with Lincoln. Every unit type has its own parking ratio that we think is feasible, what we would need here to be leasable. So we have the internal parking in the building, which would be typical, and to avoid doing a structure, we took the surface parking green here for the building. And our thought was we could probably work a deal with the city where if that wasn't utilized in Skokie, which is a different downtown environment, we have 150 units there. We're about 80% leased since January, and we're running under 1-to-1 on the parking. So if we had additional parking spots that weren't being utilized by residents, it'd be easy to put those back into a public parking pool if needed. So, and then the cul-de-sac here, I wanted to point out, this is being rebuilt. The cul-de-sac, we've actually straightened it out. We've made it a hard corner, so we've tried to replace and actually add as much public surface parking as possible back here. So we maintain the canoe launch. Every time I've been here, someone's using the canoe launch, including today when I got here. So we try to maintain all that, and there's still surface parking. This parking lot and this parking lot is untouched. And again, we thought using this parcel, first of all, allows us to, this right now is all the existing police building. There's just a narrow walkway here. So this will all become green space, really enhancing what we think could connect Potawatomi and downtown. And we tried hard to make sure that the parking made sense. So we feel good about the parking ratio we have to make the building feasible. And, hopefully if there's opportunities, we can even give some back. And again, we designed this so we could add a deck. So if you decided you wanted to do public parking and subsidize it, we could easily bump it up and put a deck there. But we've got these two sites wide open, so if you wanted to do a larger project here or here, it's wide open and feasible. So we have, and please, if there's any questions along the way, because we know that we're throwing a lot of information at you, we have some more specific plans that we could go through quickly, but we're putting the restaurant here. Right now, we envision it as being a two-story mezzanine space that allows parking to happen over here, whether it's valet or we utilize the parking in this area. This is our main entry, and then we have 3 other retail spaces. Again, in comments from staff in talking, we try to add more retail opportunities and also make them small enough where we get some potential new businesses or startups in there. So we try to be a little more thoughtful about the retail while still preserving all of the parking. Second floor, so originally we had a U-shaped building, and this was a large deck. And we tried to make that public and private space, and it was very difficult because second floor public spaces just don't get utilized. So we focused all our efforts on making the first floor in the Riverwalk public green space, and then we just have the private space here for the residents of the building that would have access to all that as well. So we think it's a good compromise, and in running these types of buildings, we think it would work very, very well. As we get into the towers, it's pretty typical. We're still tweaking this unit mix, but in working with Lincoln, what we saw in Skokie, so Skokie like this, and again, I know it's a very different site, but what's similar about it is there were no real comps in the market for a new, this is a condo quality building we're proposing. In Skokie, there were no real comps for that. So we were setting the high market rate for units, and we're going to do the same thing here. We have to do the same thing here because there's nothing like this in St. Charles. And that's why we're tweaking this unit mix. And what we found in Skokie is we were getting a lot of people, and in talking to Lincoln, we think the same thing would happen here, who want to stay in the community, but there's no real good alternative. So we're getting empty nesters who want to stay here, and that was probably 50% of the tours we did when that building first opened. And like I said, we're way ahead of leasing activity there. And then also the other residents we anticipate are professionals who want a Class A building and work nearby or work in the building. The building will be fully amenitized. So if you work from home, you'll have opportunities to do it here and have the amenities that will support you. And I have samples from what we did in Skokie if anyone is interested. It's just the most recent one we've done. So quickly, this is the program as it stands now. And again, this will go through a lot of iterations before we wind up at the final, but we have a mix of studio, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. We may add some 3 bedrooms. Skokie, the 3 bedrooms went first. We had a lot of families who wanted to stay there, interestingly. So we'll continue to work that. But what we did, we wanted to point out is we have 141 units. We have 197 parking spaces, and that's based on this ratio of 1 parking space for studio, 1.3 for 1 bedrooms, 1.6 parking spaces for the 2 bedrooms. And again, that was done after looking at many, many urban, suburban buildings that Lincoln and we have done. So we think that's appropriate from the market perspective. So here we just have a series of elevations that I think you've already seen. We've done professional renderings, so you get a good idea. But, you know, this is really the west one facing the river. We think the building fits very well. You know, to the north, you have a very high tree line. It's almost taller than the 7-story building, so it really slots perfectly into that corner. The L shape takes advantage, and we think from above this, if you go up in the residential neighborhood, you're hardly going to notice this building because we've kept it on the police station site. So it fits in very well, and we think that all this green space added to the Riverwalk is really going to enhance it, connect it to downtown, and we're extremely excited about it. And we tried to integrate also the restaurant outdoor space with the green space too, so it reads as one, one inviting public space. That's pretty much everything we had on the building. I know it was fast and it was a lot, but we want to keep it open for questions, comments. But before we do that, we have to play the animation, which, let's see, hopefully it stayed. Yeah, I'll let you go through this. That's one.
We're starting on Riverside Drive, and we're going to start moving onto the site. You're turning left, going out to the river now. The cafe is on your right. You're starting to approach the stage, and with a concert going on and the seating, as people are looking down the access back to the tower. You're coming around. That's the existing rain garden you just passed that we're enhancing and expanding. Starting to see the river now. You're starting to turn back and look at the building. This is that sloped lawn that we talked about. You can sit on that, play on it with your family, and it shields our parking. So you're continuing north now. You're getting to about where the statue is. We know your statue doesn't look like that. It's really hard to find a model, 3D model of Native American. And you're going to come up, start rising up, so you can see this is the amenity deck for the residences that would overlook the public amenity deck. And then we're starting to pan back, flying out over the river. You see all the existing park and landscape features that exist today. The Freedom Walk, the buildings along Riverside, that's the existing municipal lot. And the reflection statue for the sculpture will be down there. And then we'll end up hovering over the tower of the building that we're in right now. So that gives you the sense of why we oriented it the way we did to frame all those existing monuments. I think that's that.
So again, we're very excited about it. We think we've tried to hit all of our guiding principles, and we're talking with staff. We think they made sense. Again, feasible. We're confident we can do this project tomorrow, and we're confident that whatever other uses we want to incorporate, whether it's on the other sites or in this building, we could accommodate that as well. So, please.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for presenting. I want to say that I appreciate you guys definitely listened to what we had said last time that we met. Your plan has changed drastically from the original concept. So with that, just let me make an announcement. As far as the questioning goes, it's going to start up here with the city council. After we're done with questioning, then it's going to go to anybody that's in the room in the council chambers. After that has been exhausted, then it's going to move.
Chairperson, I'm sorry, we were just going to do questions from the council to the developer and then move on to the second presentation, and then public comment would all be reserved for the end of the meeting.
That's fair. All righty then. So with that being said, I'm going to start off with Mr. Golgata.
Okay, thank you. First off, I'd like to thank all the residents for showing up tonight. I think it's a very important project in St. Charles. Whatever side you're on, I do appreciate everybody being here and participating in this big piece of property here right by the river. So I'd say thanks again for being here tonight. I just have not questions right now, just some comments. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. First off, I like the fact that you're not asking for any taxpayer money. I do appreciate that a lot. And it is smaller. I like the scaled down version of it. And I like the fact that you're going to purchase the property. And I'm really glad you're willing to work with the city because, I mean, this is a concept plan. I understand that. I'm glad you even said you're willing to work with the city to come up with something that'll work for everybody. I also like the fact there's a lot of green space. I think that's very important for this project on the river. And you're not removing the parking lot to the north of the municipal building. And I also like the fact that you're not going to be removing any city hall properties from it. I do appreciate that. And that's all I have right now, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Golgata. Go ahead, Bill.
Yep, sure. So I echo Alderman Silkaitis's, commending everyone for coming out tonight in full force. This is a really important topic, so glad everyone came. I do want to thank developer Murphy and team for coming out and putting a lot of thought and effort into this. Clearly, you've been listening to the community and made some really important updates. I do like the green space that you've shown here. I like the restaurant, the use of the small concert venue. I think those are nice additions that the community can really take advantage of. The one question I had that I wanted to understand a little bit more, I feel like it's worth exploring with the loss of Pheasant Run, our community being weakened a little in terms of being an entertainment destination. So when you talk about a hotel not being economically feasible today, and with things changing as quickly as they are, with a lot of places opening up, more weddings, more events happening, nowhere to really have large events here in St. Charles, help me understand that decision a little bit more to not put any kind of hotel in this space.
As far as our decision to keep it multifamily, well, I think it's two things. One, to get a vibrant downtown, as we know from a lot of work in the city and elsewhere, you need residents who are committed downtown. And the multifamily is usually the best way to attract that. So it may not be in the building, but it's certainly going to enhance all of the uses downtown, restaurants, everything else, and do it in a way that's least impactful from a parking and traffic perspective. It's much less impactful than an office building or a hotel or any of that. So we thought that was pretty straightforward, and we liked that the way it fit in here. And I said we just opened a 500-key hotel downtown. We've done many, many hotels in other cities as well. The environment just now is risky. It doesn't mean it can't be done. I was part of the team that did the hotel in downtown Naperville, and I can tell you it sounds good, but it's very hard to run a hotel on weekend weddings. You need business travelers during the week. You just do, especially for a high-end hotel like this would be. So it's feasible. We'd consider it, but we wanted to put something that we could get going right away because we thought, this is going to generate close to $700,000 a year in real estate taxes. So if you want to put a TIF in place around this, you'd have a lot of flexibility and maybe other sites to get those complementary uses you wanted that will further enhance the downtown. But I think the most important thing for downtowns is residents, and that's really what adds to the vibrancy in our view. So again, we're open to all those ideas, and we certainly are. We've done them all, but we thought this was the most likely to get done quickly as possible. Especially, again, it's unprecedented how quickly this environment has changed since the RFP came out. But we're very confident we could get this deal done.
Okay.
And it would be great for the community.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Can I ask one more follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead.
So, in terms of the price per square foot of these units, I know you said it was fairly unique. Do you have any ballpark figures?
As far as rental, so we need a minimum of $2.75. So you're talking, and that's why we're tweaking and we'll continue to tweak the size of the units. And we made it a little more. We're getting more. That's what we pro forma in Skokie, and we're getting a lot more than that because there was unmet demand for this type of housing in a market that didn't have it. So we have to sharpen our pencils and work with our financing sources to convince ourselves that we are going to set the bar here, but we've done it before and we think we could do it here. But
275 is a foot. That's
$275 a square foot. Yes.
Those that may not.
So if you have a 600 square foot small studio, that comes out to about $1,600 a month. But that's what you have to have to support new construction on a multifamily, and that's why we tried very, very hard to make this building as efficient. And we have work to do, but that's why we didn't want to introduce any structured parking, because if we did, we would have to have a TIF. And we built a 6-story parking garage in Skokie. They have a very significant investment in that project, which again, we're happy to do. It worked out well, but we thought we'd try one that didn't need the subsidy. Again, it's timing to market and getting it open. So, if you wait a few years and you miss out on the real estate taxes, it's money you can't get back. So if you were going to do a TIF or you do want to enhance other things there, this seemed like a good project that could really be kind of the cornerstone of that effort, if that makes sense.
Yep, thank you.
Rita?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I had 4 questions, and your presentation answered them all, so thank you for that. So I'll just want to sum up real quick that I appreciate the very thoughtful use of the footprint, and that was clear with all your vision sharing there. And I also appreciate that you're making sure now that it's economically feasible, so we're not having any surprises down the road. So thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Ryan, go ahead.
So what are the chances that down the road we might have to go back and revisit a TIF? Like, what scenarios might there be where, we get 6 months in, we're breaking ground, and we found out we have to do something else that would require? Is there what's the likelihood that we might have to come back and revisit how this is going to get funded?
You mean for this project in particular? Well, it wouldn't be when we broke ground. Probably be too late then. But
a little late.
There's a series of unknowns on the site that we tried hard to at least put some numbers on, but we don't have a survey of the site. We're assuming we could fit it where we want to fit it, and we tried to be very respectful of not encroaching on the river, not taking any additional property. So, that would be the first simple thing. We don't have any geotechnical or engineering data on the site, so we're not assuming a deep foundation here like we usually do in the city and we did in Skokie. So there's a series of cost questions. The biggest one is you have utilities on the site, like because you run your own utilities, there was no thought of developing it at some point. So there's a remarkable amount of utilities in a small site that we would have to rectify. So, our thought was the land is worth X, and it's those unique characteristics. You discount the land for those costs, and whether it's you adjust the price or it has to come out somewhere. Right. So we would if we were selected, we would go through all that and be sure. And we have a fair amount of engineering work to do on the building too. We'd like to do it in wood. We think we can do it in wood, but we'd have to. Right now, we have it figured as steel. But if we could do it in wood, we could really come a long way and save a lot. So there would be a period of time where we go through and just verify the basic, like we would for any site we're buying, what the real engineering conditions are. And this
there's
one
a
has
chance that we could be in a spot where we may need to visit a TIF down the line potentially.
I mean, it's not our intent.
Right.
And I don't see it, based on what we know so far, I don't see it. I think we could do it feasibly.
Okay.
Because we do have estimates for relocating utilities, for the demolition of the building. Again, it's based on imperfect information. We have no environmental or anything, but we've done all that legwork, so we think we're pretty close. And what it's going to come down to is, do we think we could set the market for the rate? Right. That's what it's going to come down to. And we feel really good because we did it in Skokie.
So is there any interest, I know you said that you guys have done other projects, you've done hotels, the aspect of doing this particular project here, is there interest in making this not so residential? Is there interest, like, if this council comes back and says, hey, we like the design, we like a lot about it, we're just not wild about 140, residential units. We like to look at something that's more mixed use. Is that something that your team says, yeah, we would be willing to do, or we would love to, we just don't think it's possible and we can't do it?
You want to take it?
Yeah, come up to the podium, Mr. Murphy. Thank you.
We're open to, looking into it and investigating it, but the data that we've collected thus far indicates that it wouldn't be feasible. The ADRs, average daily rates, it would be possible, but it would require a fairly significant subsidy directly from the village to make it feasible. But we're open to it. Maybe the village wants to own the hotel. I don't know. It could certainly be built. I see it.
No, sir.
I vote no.
I'm not sure we do either.
Go on.
Yeah. But also, your question about the TIF, as we collaborate in this process and the village says that they need more parking than what we're showing, and we'd have to go to a structured parking thing, that would trigger a need to visit the TIF. This, what we're showing here, we don't think we need it at all. So, but are we open to hotel? Yeah, but I would put that in a very low probability. And as for the, resort, the Lost of Pheasant Run, I think there's opportunities for this village to pursue, convention-related development, but I think it's a very separate pursuit, and you'd be looking at a lot of different subsidies to support the successful execution of that. So,
and if you're talking other uses like retail, we're trying to be very respectful of the process you put in place. So we did not go to the public. We did not widely distribute this, but we did poke around for some retailers, and we have a restaurant, Jameson's, that said sure they're interested to take a look at it. The challenge is you need new market rents. We're not getting in Skokie in the retail. I can tell you that right now. We're effectively subsidizing the retail there. We're putting a huge amount of capital into each one, and restaurants are having a tough time right now. So that's the current market. So to do something bigger scale for retail, yeah, we would certainly look at it, and we would go out to the market and confirm those assumptions. But we think this is the most probably economically feasible, but we're certainly open to all of that. And maybe there's a user out there that is dying to have a 30,000 square foot restaurant. We're all over it.
I'm going to steal Paul's time. So just one last question. So there was a comment that was made about that this project, the design would draw, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that this would draw people from Potawatomi. How?
I'm saying if you're a pedestrian. Okay. So we tried to keep it open and inviting. Right now, it's not very inviting because that other building goes right up, and it's kind of a small river walk. So this at least would be a little more open, because I've been there many times. I've walked Potawatomi, I've ridden my bike, and people do come from Potawatomi through here, but there's not a compelling reason to. You're not walking, it's a vacant building. Yeah. So we think this, and that's why we tried to keep it as green as possible, just to make it so it's a 24/7 public space amenity that could be utilized. And it just seemed to make a lot of sense. The other huge advantage we have here is the river's at grade. The site's at the grade of the river. So so there's no steps. You know, I know on the other side of the river, there's some that have steps going down. In the city, we have a lot of areas like that, and it's tough. It's hard to attract people down to the river. So this is right there. It's a huge opportunity, design-wise.
Go ahead, Mr. Bancroft.
So, just a few comments. So first, you know, I commend you on following the process. I think you guys have been true to what was requested by the city, and I think that's certainly worthy of commendation. Second thing, your responsiveness to feedback. I think it's been fantastic. So I think you spent the time, you listened to the public, you heard what they had to say, and I think that this material shows it. And if you can you find the slide that's going down the hill?
One of the pictures? Yeah. Oh, I know, from Third and, yeah.
So the only reason I highlight that slide is...
Uh-oh, I'm frozen.
It really shows the consideration given to the programming, so...
yeah, this one. No, we think this tells a story. And again, we're able to take advantage of the topography, but there's going to be very few places this is such a great opportunity to put something of this scale in that particular location with really minimal impacts.
And still make it somewhat invisible from the top of that.
We think so. And that's another reason why we didn't continue it all the way across there and break it up.
So just from a programming standpoint, I mean, I think, and a thought process standpoint, I really appreciate the fact that this is the way you looked at it in terms of its placement and in terms of the impacts all the way around it. Including from the river. You know, a lot of people focus on what it looks like from the river. Obviously, that'll be the most visible. But this is a really important slide, I think, and really demonstrates how much thought you gave into this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I as far as comments go, I don't love the fact that public is losing, I believe, 65 spots. Obviously, parking is a big issue in town. So the fact that public's going to be losing that is concern that I have. I know that you guys would be open to doing something else to possibly do a parking deck, which is great to hear. Also, just curious as to more thought being put into utilizing the river more, as far as maybe the residents that are there, or just having that access be, you know, like how I look at how you have like the people, you know, the courtyard where they're dancing or whatever. Like, how does that going to, like, planning that would integrate more with the public to kind of tie that all in? Like, who would own that piece of property? How would the entertainment, like, you know, is that in conjunction with the city? You know, stuff like that.
Those are all great points, and that's what we love to work out with you. I think we've done it before. It's easy to do, but we have a great palette. I mean, there's so many options you could do to enhance that Riverwalk. So we just put our suggestions out there, fully expecting to have to go through all that and negotiate it, so it's optimal. This is our idea, but we certainly know there's other ones that could be. And one of the things we didn't mention, there's a couple. We built a high-rise in the South Loop, and we had a big blank wall. We don't have any here, but we have a couple opportunities, and we did a big public art piece. So we had a local art organization. We did a worldwide search. We found a graffiti artist from Germany. We brought her in, and she did the biggest mural in the South Loop on the side of the building. That's been extremely well received. So there's a couple opportunities for public art, and we're open for all that. And we really, we think it's a fabulous site, and we can't wait to engage in those negotiations with you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a really good plan. It's a competent plan. So I appreciate that. Thank you. One of the things is changing from, you said the public space that was elevated wasn't something that people used. But I always thought that was interesting, because some of the things that I've been thinking about in trying to decide how we should move forward is, one, you know, this land, city shouldn't own land. Let's go ahead and get it off of the tax rolls. So how can this be the best investment in the city? Increase parking. And so I look at the parking numbers and you say, well, we can figure out parking, but I want to see if there's ways that we can augment the parking that's available. I would love to have seen a little bit more mixed use, because anytime you see that, you're seeing economic development in downtown. You know, we're adding a bunch of people here that are, you know, honestly, just by bringing the people downtown, that's economic development, because we've got more people that are going to be spending their dollars downtown. But I would love to see a little bit more mixed-use component in what you're doing. I thought that the green space along the river was interesting. I really appreciate the video that you put through, because there's a couple different ways that you can take it. But I thought it kind of had a park feel to it. It flowed through, and I could imagine people, kind of enjoying flowing down from it. The one thing that I didn't see that, we could talk more about is I take a look at the architecture of the building, and we have this opportunity right next to the river, and I want to see something that wows me. Like architecturally something. We have this, we've got this landmark here that we're right at a part of, that puts a signature on St.Charles. And I think that this is a good plan. We can definitely do it. But I want to see, as we go forward, architectural detail or something that is very signature worthy, because we have this opportunity. We only got a couple jewels next to the river, so I want to see something that is, something that will be a part of St. Charles and endure centuries.
I couldn't agree more with you on the architecture, by the way, and we kept it purposely muted because, we don't want to bias it one way or the other, and we're wide open to that, and we agree with you.
Yeah, and that was one of the things when you said that people won't use that elevated deck. I had I'm an Italian guy, I had Rocky coming up the stairs, something there. I imagine those as really, a really cool feature that was down there, so I was a little bit disappointed to lose that, but you know better than me. I'm not going to tell your business, but I'm still I think it's really competent. I'm glad that you guys are finance ready now. Did you mention? And I'm sorry if I missed it because I didn't write it down. What do you expect the total value of this project to be?
Our total budget right now is $65 million.
Okay. How much of that were you guys planning on financing, and how much of you are going to participate in the bank market? So how much?
In our model, we've got 65% right now, but maybe it's 60 given where we're right now, and we're at SOFR plus 3% on the rate, and we update that.
And everything's
every week.
It's all moving right now.
So far,
yeah.
That's why we like it. Again, it's going to come down to what we could convince ourselves we think the rental rate would be.
And you guys are planning on owning it long term to manage it?
I mean, typically we'd probably get it stabilized and sell. That's the typical model.
Okay.
I mean, but there's other ones, 1326, we've been in, 5 years, so we're open to it. It just depends. If it makes sense, we'd be open to it.
Okay.
Or if we think, short term, like the one in the South Loop, we think short term the value's not there, but long term it is, so we're hanging on to it.
Understood. That's everything I have for now.
But and on the retail, I think when you say mixed use, you're saying retail. We're open to that. The issue is it takes up surface parking, so you lose parking, and it adds parking requirement, and it adds traffic. We're all open for that.
Yeah.
The bigger concern is how much we're going to spec.
And that's when I talk about we could talk about adding parking, but what are we adding the parking for? Because we take a look, we're taking out the police uses there, so you don't have those uses.
Yeah.
So as I take a look, I don't have my head around what I actually think is an effective parking change, because you're adding the 141 units there, and you got change in utility, and you're we're not using them the same way that the parking that's down here. We're taking a lot of city use out of here. So, but I'm just paying attention to the greatest ad. But we can afford to pay for parking if it's getting paid through sales tax dollars and other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said,
same balance for us, same balance for you. It's just all got to pay for itself.
Yeah, we're wide open to any of that. I said we tried to give you a project we could finance on our own that's feasible, that makes sense. Any enhancements, we're wide open.
Which is where I come back around to the point that I made in closing is I want to see something that is that shines down there, because that'll bring people, that'll bring existing communities, people down here to take a look at this and see what's going on. And we got this opportunity to add a jewel to St. Charles, which just heightens where we're at and driving people down as an entertainment district in a place where they want to spend their time regardless of where they live.
I couldn't agree more.
So, cool. Well, we'll move forward with that. But no, it's a great job.
Chairperson, I just wanted to let you know we're about 15 minutes left for questions.
Okay.
Real quick, lots of echoing. Appreciate Todd's comment about this slide that you have up. I think that's a great visual especially for many people who are in the audience. Thank you again for being here, everybody. Overall, I love the green, lots of green. I see that, thank you for considering that and listening and incorporating that. Again, Paul beat me to it. Architecture, I know it's kind of just a place, dare I say, a placeholder, if you will. It kind of reminds me of my resident hall a little bit in college. No offense, but yeah, we'll move on. We'll get past that, I know. But yeah, I think the concept is sound, and I do like you took into consideration geographies. The statue's still there. The municipal building has not been touched. So you followed the process. Thank you for that. And love the amphitheater. And so I think, yeah, we can talk more about architecture. I know that's not even something we want to talk about now, but orientation and just basic use, I think it's a good plan. So
Yeah,
thank you.
Like I said, we focused on the massing and how it fit in the context, but certainly we're wide open, and we agree that this is a spectacular location, and we want a spectacular project there.
And the fact that you keep reiterating, which I love, that you'll work with us, that's great, and it's finance ready, so thank you.
Go ahead,
Well, thank you for your presentation. You appear very thoughtful in your approach, and you're definitely listening, and I appreciate that. So I just have questions. Quick answers is fine. All the green space is open to the public, is that correct? The green space that's shown in this picture?
Except the second floor deck.
Except for the second floor,
Yeah.
okay.
No, everything around the building would be, be both, but it's public, yes.
Okay, and then I'm going to echo my colleagues' comments about the architecture as well. I think that definitely needs some work to blend in with the Potawatomi neighborhood. I'm sure you'll work on that.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, it's tough. When you're presenting, you're never...
Right.
And we'd rather get input and react.
So the amphitheater, you had something a little different in your other drawing. You had it more in the corner, the amphitheater.
Yeah, and that conflicted with the existing, what's that one called there, the Freedom Walk? So we didn't want to, again, we don't want to be very sensitive to what was there. And we thought it's great, so why not enhance it? So the way we had it configured before conflicted with the Freedom Walk, so that's why we changed it. But again, that's all detail that we're wide open to, however it turns out.
Yeah, because I like what you have down in Orland Park, at the Orland Park Triangle, that kind of a amphitheater. I think that's on one of your drawings here. So
yeah, that was something that
yeah.
the white.
Yeah,
we're open for all that. Just we're trying to be sensitive. We thought it was important to preserve and enhance everything that was there.
Okay. And then, are you interested? Batavia has something called the Batavia Boardwalk. Mm-hmm. Is that something you're willing to do or consider? Are you open to that at all?
My understanding is it's kind of a retail.
It is. It's small retail for startup, and then if they're successful, then they move into a bigger footprint downtown. Is that?
I don't know how you finance it, but yeah, we are wide open. Whether it's
you're flexible. You're flexible.
Or something like that. Absolutely. If there's a program that could be fitted with it, if it's like cart concepts, we're wide open to all that.
Okay. Are you pretty much fixed on the unit count? Are you flexible on that? The number?
No, we're flexible. We think. That's about the minimum you want to do to get the quality that we're anticipating. That's full-time doorman. That's really getting the efficiencies of running the building. But we're flexible on it.
Okay.
We tried to scale it so we could get the same number of units in like an all 6-story building. But we tried to be sensitive to that. So, but no, we're definitely open for it.
And then another question: you're not interested at all of any interest in the municipal building where we're at, or any of the city buildings attached to this building? You have no interest in them whatsoever, is that correct?
Only if you wanted to work with us to come up with something that made sense for you, but we wouldn't.
You have no
interest? We're not proposing anything. We thought that doing this as a feasible project, that leaves you options in the future. So you can do whatever you want with that. And it also eliminates a huge phasing issue with your parking and everything else. But if you wanted to put a parking garage on either one of those, or maybe the parking lot behind the municipal building, that would be a great mixed use. You put all retail on the first floor, you do a garage above it. That gives you the flexibility to do that in the future.
I guess where I'm going with is I don't want this building touched or the 2 city buildings. They're historical buildings, and I want them left alone. So I want to make sure there's reassurance.
Respect that. Yeah, and that's another reason why we have the one site that made the most sense.
Okay, and I like that you are confined to the police department's site, and I like that you're willing to pay something for the site, and you're not asking for a subsidy, and I like that. So I love the green space. You added a lot of green space, so I'm not going to get in the weeds a lot of things, but I think there's potential, and you seem flexible. And I think the biggest thing is, are you willing to work with the residents in the community on this, maybe with a neighborhood meeting or something like that, if we get to that point.
Yeah, we
Okay.
fully anticipate that's part of the process. But again,
Okay.
it's not for this particular meeting and process, that we want to be respectful of that and not jump the gun and do anything outside of the context of this
I'll collect more thoughts, but thank you.
But no, absolutely, we fully expect, even if we get selected, there's going to be a full entitlement process that would include all of those public meetings and all the zoning issues and all that good stuff.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you for your presentation. It was very enlightening. And the green space, I will say, as a few of the council members have echoed, is very attractive. I like the way it's set up. I will agree with Councilmember Warbaugh. A lot of my questions have already been asked. I'm just going to give you some comments that I would like to see that green space completely 100% interactive with our Riverwalk. You know, I know we, currently now we have festivals that block up streets. We kind of expect that, but I'd like to see that completely open to the public. And then secondly, restaurant retails, my question to you is going to be versus parking. I know parking's an issue, and I can see where you're coming off with in regards to the trade-off, but I would be interested in more restaurant and or additional retail. They're obviously, they generate revenue for the city, and those would be a little bit higher on my list of importance. And then last but not least, I know this question's been asked, so I'll try not to ask it the same way, but in regards to the hotel feasibility, do you believe, and maybe it's not your question to answer, but do you believe there's a demand for hotel space right on the river here in St. Charles? Or were you thinking of that as you went through this process?
Do I think there's demand? Absolutely. And like I said, my experience with the one in Naperville, there's absolutely demand there. Is there enough demand? I don't know. And we would be willing to look at it? Yes. You know, we could probably figure out something, but again, we just wanted to stay away from the subsidy for it. That's going to be subsidized no matter what. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we didn't want to. We're doing 4 levels of underground parking in Rock and Nashville right now, and I want nothing to do with that on this site. So we want to keep it feasible. It's just a better use of everyone's money. We thought, but we would look at it for sure. We're just not sure it would work right now.
Okay, thank you.
I know that you had mentioned that the 140 units was kind of the number. There's always concern with height of buildings on the river. We just went through a whole iteration of a different building in height was a big concern. Now I do know that we have the natural height up, incline, which is great for this project. If you had to do this all in, say, 5 stories, is that feasible?
We tweaked around a little bit and looked at it, and the 5-story helps us structurally a lot, cost-wise. So yeah, we think there's probably a combination that could work.
4 stories?
Pardon me?
Would you do it in 4 stories?
I mean,
just asking the question.
You know what's funny? This site is perfectly appropriate for the scale, and it would be a waste not to. This is the one site downtown that makes for scale like this, we think. But yeah, we're open to it if it works. But you're not going to be able to pay for the utility relocations, and you're not going to be. It's a premium site because of all the costs involved with it. So the smaller the project, the more subsidy you'd have to put in. That's all.
Go ahead, Todd.
So you're at the podium, you're being asked questions, you're showing flexibility. I think all that's great. I want to be crystal clear, though. If you had thought that a hotel was the way to go from an investment standpoint, or a bunch of retail was the way to go from an investment standpoint, you would have proposed it, right? And you didn't. Correct. And your professionals and this council should understand that that's the advice, if nothing else, coming back from this side of the table. Maybe different on this side, but that's the advice coming back from here. Otherwise, it would have been there.
Yeah, and we're happy to share our data.
Yeah.
Please come to the podium and talk to me. I'm sorry. That way it can be.
I'm happy to share our analytics and data that we've collected for this specific location to educate the council, the community on why it doesn't appear to be feasible and what level of subsidy would be required in order for it to move forward. So, we're transparent on the whole thing. So hopefully that helps.
Yep.
Is there any more questions from the council, Baron? No? Okay, so that wraps up the presentation. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Murphy.
Thank you, guys.
Derek, did you want to make another introduction here, or anything to say?
Good evening. I'm Kurt Hurst. I live at 700 North 3rd Avenue in St. Charles. Just a real quick introduction. I've been in the development business for 30 years, primarily in the Chicagoland area. And everybody knows we have, concentrated a lot of our efforts in the downtown St. Charles effort over the last 3 or 4 years for various reasons, many reasons. That's a quick introduction to myself. For myself, I'd like to give Mike Reschke, who is one of our partners from the Prime Group, the opportunity to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background just before we get started. Just keep the format similar as we did.
Good evening. I'm Mike Reschke. I'm the founding shareholder and CEO of the Prime Group in Chicago, company I founded in 1981. So we enjoyed our 40th anniversary last year. We're a national development firm that prides itself on impactful urban development in all asset classes, from 50, 60-story high-rise office towers to luxury hotels, luxury condominium, residential apartments, shopping centers, and the like. So we have a very broad background. I met Kurt about a year and a half ago through a mutual friend who brought us to this community. Last time I was here was, I think, 1976 at Arthur Anderson's school. I worked there for 6 months, then went on to law school. But the community has always been a special place in the western suburbs of Chicago. When I saw the opportunity here and thought about the mixed-use potential of this site on the river, we got pretty excited. We were a little skeptical at first. Kurt asked us to come in and study the potential of this project to have a luxury hotel, and we did our homework and we did our analysis, and we have a lot of luxury hotel experience. And we believe there's an exciting opportunity for a small. We believe that there's a lot of opportunity for a small luxury boutique hotel, which we'll be delighted to discuss more. We'll get into more detail about the hotel aspects and its financial feasibility and the impact that it can have on this community, and the impact that luxury hotels have had on comparable communities in Chicagoland area, for example. Of worthy note is the renovation in downtown Lake Forest of the Deer Path Inn, which was an old, sleepy, small boutique hotel that fell in a little bit into disrepair. It was acquired, and the new owner did a wonderful renovation in 2016. And now it's sort of the icon of the community in terms of social events, weddings, group corporate meetings. It's small, but it's impactful. And the room rates are astonishing. We went from, say, a $150 a night facility to $400 or $500 average daily room rates today. So if you think big, if you commit to luxury, if you commit to excellence, and we're not talking about thousands and thousands of rooms. We're talking about 100 to 150 room hotel here. It can be successful. We believe it be successful. We're willing to commit and invest money to make it successful. And I think we have a proven track record. Just to give you a little background, we're heavily concentrated in the redevelopment of downtown Chicago right now. In 2008, I started construction on the first luxury hotel in downtown Chicago since the Palmer House was built in the late 20s. 610 room, not a small hotel, 610 room JW Marriott. Everybody thought I had holes in my head. $365 million investment. And it opened right after the recession was ending. Because remember, we started construction in 2008 at the beginning of the deep recession of 2009. Opened in 2010 to much success, much acclaim, won all sorts of awards. Since then, 34 new hotels have been built downtown Chicago, over 100 new restaurants. The population in the Loop, downtown Chicago, went from 20,000 in 2010 to 45,000 today. Activity, downtown Chicago is no longer, you can shoot a cannon at 5 o'clock at night. It's a vibrant community, and it's getting better every day. We also recently bought the James R. Thompson, the State of Illinois building downtown. We had a vision, we had a dream. We wanted to be impactful to downtown Chicago, and our redevelopment attracted Google to come and commit to take the entire 1.3 million square foot building and move 5,000 jobs and on LaSalle Street, across the street from City Hall. Impactful, real development, but you got to think big, dream big, and carry through with your commitments and your promises. And that's why I'm on here tonight. That's why I'm on the team with Conrad and Kurt. And I'm pleased to answer any questions at the end about the hotel, its economics, and its feasibility. Thank you.
Again, thank you. To start, I'd like to, say that, being involved in this community project, we take a great deal of pride and commitment in this. This is our home. We feel very comfortable here. We want to make sure that we get this right. I've personally met with over 300 residents in the community over the course of the last couple of months. I wanted to provide as much information to them as possible and hear about our proposal. I wanted to hear about their comments. I wanted to hear about their concerns. And that's really important to me from the perspective of I'm in this community. We plan to continue engaging directly with the community as we develop the concept. That's really vitally important to make sure that we get this right. And I'll let them speak for themselves, which I'm sure they will, as we go through the process tonight and into the next couple of meetings. But I've received tremendous feedback on what they like and what they don't like. We're taking that all in. In our current proposal, we haven't drawn all of those things in there because we think as you move through the process, it becomes important to hear all of their comments, and we think that's important. But we are definitely committed to working with the community, the city, and everyone that's involved in this project to make sure that this becomes the opportunity that the city really wants, including the residents. Our proposed Plaza San Carlo, as we've named it, is a bold design. We think it invigorates the east bank of the river that's already starting to see new development, and as well, it brings really the opportunity to connect with all of downtown. We see it as a mix of new luxury residential, retail, restaurant, and hospitality venues that define a grand open public space as its principal feature. The core concept of the design is based on the unique opportunity to create a sense of community that unifies the emerging East Bank throughout the city of downtown. We envision the municipal building as a key architectural focal point, much like Venice and other plazas of the world. As we call it, this is our Campanelli. Inspired by classical European city centers, the design adds to the feeling of a municipal campus at the center of the city, but is not limited to government use. The buildings defining the open space are characterized by classical, yet thoroughly modern architecture, generous windows, Juliet balconies, and ornamental railings. It's hard to get all of that in right now, but we hope that through some of these renderings you can get a sense of, our approach to the architecture was really to make it as significant as we can from the standpoint that we want it to be something that lasts for centuries, if that's the case. I know that's dreaming big, but European cities have dreamed big, for hundreds of years. The buildings defining the open space are really envisioned as a community gathering space enhanced by cobblestone pavers, landscape river walk, and generous outdoor activities. One of the greatest amenities that the city of St. Charles has is its public parks, particularly Potawatomi Park. We view the plaza and its, use as very interactive and engaging with Potawatomi Park and the vast amenities that it has, fully immersing the residents and visitors alike. The setting provides ample opportunities for grand special event uses. Again, we thought big on all of that, whether they're farmers markets or art fairs. Let me kind of get through some of these just so there's all kinds of outdoor activity that you can have as part of the plaza. And it really does interact with Potawatomi Park. Let me get to, So one of our things that we thought was very important was how do we get the community involved? And as you can see here, this again is just, renderings from all over the world, but farmers markets, art fairs, all of the things that we're currently doing, but we want to try and make it as robust as we possibly can. And we think that's important to get the community engaged. Robust programming will engage the public and regularly turning the plaza into the Potawatomi Park into a true city center in the classical meaning of the term. As these become parts of the fabric of the community, we can see from many points throughout the city what really we can do with interactivity with the public. The Hotel St. Carlos is featured at the center of the plaza, opening onto engaging the outdoors. The hotel includes conference accommodations of approximately 500 guests, a full-service spa, restaurant, lounge, and a rooftop experience. All of these available to hotel guests as well as the community. There are also 2 restaurants and a cafe on the plaza that are fronting the river, and they have opportunities for generous outdoor al fresco dining and interaction with the community as well. Both the Prime Group and Frontier Development, as many do, participate in restaurant groups, and we have a very high level of confidence in bringing concepts that are additive to the vibrant dining scene that's already existing in downtown St. Charles. The induced demand, and that's what the hotel business, and I'm going to let Mike speak mostly to the hotel because that's one of the primary reasons that we partnered with Mike was not only his development in large-scale developments, but also his experience in the hotel industry. But the induced demand in the hotel and the programming on the plaza become very important venues that enhance the exposure and success of business already existing downtown, whether that's restaurants or other retail shops. But we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to bring as much new activity downtown as possible. The residents at San Carlo, that completes the north side with a main entrance and drop off directly off the plaza, defining the elegant lifestyle with a new distinctive address. And then following along the Fox River, into that picture, is a new publicly upgraded owned riverwalk. We envision that definitely being part of the public space. It's currently in relatively disrepair, and it needs to be revitalized. And so we really want to take that opportunity to enhance it as much as we possibly can. There's lots of activity or lots of things that you can do there. These are samples, keeping the public interactive with both the plaza while providing some landscaping, and there's definitely an opportunity to enhance all of that. But they've thoroughly immersed, what we see is immersing the public in the plaza experience to add significant new opportunities for the city, whether that's employment or new business, new dining experiences, new tourism, and conference business as well. As I met with the community, and I met with a lot of people within the community, there were 4 primary concerns that really surfaced. building heights, green space, city participation in the financing, and parking and traffic. They were all of equal importance. And we had a lot of conversation about that. And we've listened. To talk about the heights, I think this is probably kind of hard to see on this slide likely, but I'll point out a few things that I can talk about, and I'm sure there'll be some questions. The proposed buildings have varying heights that reflect, prominent architectural design elements. They're similar to other buildings in the city, both old and new, and are intended to add architectural interest. Again, it's subject to change as we move through this, but a majority of the building is 58 feet in height, and it steps down to 47 feet at the riverfront. And there are two gable roof elements that extend to 76 feet and 86 feet, but they are really architectural highlights of the building as opposed to the whole building. It's very intentional and provides flexibility to change as we go through our final discussions with both the community and the city about what is the overall mix of this. We've predetermined at some level what we think is a good opportunity from a hotel and residential mix, as well as retail. But we're definitely of the mind that, if the community wants something different, then we have flexibility in design. We could take off a floor of this building and get, technically speaking, right now the top floor of the main part of the building is 58 feet. If we took off one floor, it would get under the height variance of 50 feet. I think that's important to note. And we also, design the flexibility in the way we have it laid out so that we can migrate residential into the retail or into the hotel space and vice versa. A lot of that just depends as we move through the process. What does the community want? What does the city want? If it wants smaller hotel space, more residential space, or vice versa, we can flex into that. And we can also change, some of the connectivity of the building. So, but again, we put this out there as what we think is a great use of architecture as it relates to the plaza, more important than anything. Green space was another topic that we talked in great detail. We understand that green space is very important. Our design really contemplates a classic European plaza. Doesn't mean that we can't introduce more green space than what is currently in there, but our initial thoughts are we want to have as much interactivity with the public as we possibly can in terms of how we use the space. That goes back to the robust planning. There's an amphitheater in the center, intentionally so that we can, whether it's farmers markets or musical or theatrical performances, all of those can center off of that, which connects to the Riverwalk and brings people up onto the plaza on a regular basis, whether they're public or private events, and we anticipate fully both of those. I think that's probably the best way to describe what we see as the reason that we go with a plaza versus, more of a greenscape, if you will. Doesn't mean that we can't introduce that green landscaping components in there, but we think that there's lots of flexibility to be able to do that. One of the other comments that became very, prominent in our conversations with the community was the participation in financing. We understand that. As part of our comprehensive approach to the site design, a great deal of our improvements are public in nature. Those are, the infrastructure, parking deck, Riverwalk improvements, mitigating the floodplain, and even acquisition of the land. Those are things that all become part of an opportunity to partner with the city from a financing standpoint. We are asking the city to form a TIF district for this, and those eligible costs would fall in there. but this would be issued on a pay-as-you-go revenue bond that would offset the cost of these public improvements. It'd be very similar to the sales tax revenue bonds that were issued in 2008 for Costco out on Randall Road. They're revenue bonds. They're non-recourse to the city, and they're payable solely from the incremental real estate taxes, sales taxes, business district taxes, and they're all on a non-recourse basis, and we need to make sure that everybody understands that, because what we are asking for in our TIF district is a partnership with the city, but it is on a non-recourse basis. And we think that's significant from the standpoint of, in order to do a project of this scale, there is no doubt that that requires the partnership. But we want to make sure that we're sensitive to all of the conversations that we've had with council, as well as the community, that it is a non-recourse bond, that will not affect the credit rating or the ability of the city to do other financing as they move through their planning. The creation of the TIF, along with the city's existing hotel sales and liquor tax, will make the development a significant revenue center for the city that can address current needs of existing projects as well as future projects. The fourth topic that really is, a big part of what the community has spoken, as well as the city, is parking. We think it's critical to have, to address the parking, and our proposal is net positive. Net positive by 2. It's not a lot, we understand that, but it's net positive. What I mean by that is there's currently, I have a little different count than the Murphy Group does, and that probably just depends on which ones you're counting. But we have 254 public spaces that are currently existing. Our proposal includes a parking garage. It has 524 total spaces. That's not all in the parking garage. We have some parking under the building as well. But if you total up both of those two, there is approximately 524 total spaces. Our demand for the hotel and the residents and the retail is approximately 268 spaces. So that gets us back to, so if you take the 524 spaces that we will end up with, subtract out the 268 spaces that are required, we get back to the 256 spaces, which is essentially the same as the current parking of 254. So that's why we say it's net positive. We think that's important because we want to make sure that the community knows that not only we're listening to the parking concerns, but we're also wanting to work through those solutions. And there are other opportunities throughout the city, and we want to partner with the city to solve what those parking and traffic demands are. And with our proposal, creating new revenue sources for the city becomes an important component of that. Last, I know our design raised a lot of concerns about City Hall. And what I think is important to understand is this is what it would look like as we have, let's call it, boldly planned. It doesn't by any means mean that that's where we land. We just want, in our design, we just want to think about what are the possibilities. We understand fully that there are sensitive buildings throughout the city and that we have to work with those. And the things that we're doing are at least giving you the idea of what can be. This is the building that is currently existing as a view from Riverside, or from North Avenue and Riverside Avenue. As you can see, it does change how you view the plaza, and that's why we wanted to make sure you could see that perspective without it there. You can put any kind of space that we want to have in the open space that's currently the parking spots. It could be parking, which would be additional to where we are. It could be green space. It could be interactivity with the community in terms of Route 64 and the entrance, even with it like this. But we think it's important that you at least look at what the interactivity is with the community and Route 64. Again, we don't have any interest. It's not part of the RFP. We don't anticipate that would be done or not done. We just want to make sure that we're talking about it and having the conversation. This is another view of keeping these two existing buildings, making a connection with the city. Again, you can keep the parking that's there. You can make it into green space. That's wide open depending on what the final use ends up being for the municipal center, as it were. Again, that's just an upper perspective of that. Again, these are easy pictures, not great detail, but they give you a sense of what it can look like. Being sensitive to just the old City Hall building, this is what that would look like. That building was built in 1893, and that's what that building looked like in 1893. It didn't have the extensions behind it or to the south of it. And I thought this was an important perspective just so you could see that if you stay true to the historic nature, then that would be an opportunity as well. Again, I want to reiterate that, we're not, saying that this part of the project plan is critical. Uh-oh. Oh, that's me. Just hit escape and it goes back there. But we wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to think outside of the box, if you will, architecturally. And there's an opportunity to make any of those versions work. Again, we don't have any interest in it. We know it would be in addition to our proposal, both in terms of partnering or how that would shape out, but we wanted to make sure that everybody could, get a good understanding of what that looked like with or without those. That's really the purpose of those slides. Having said that, I think it's important to talk about the architecture. And what I want to do is have Lucy Ann come up and give us, and Victor, to give us their perspectives of where they see the architecture and what the opportunities are for changes and how we view this as a classical architectural element that will stand the test of time. And I think it's important to keep in mind as we go through this, we are not saying that there has to be 164 hotel rooms, that there has to be this particular architectural element, or that there has to be 160 residences. We have a lot of flexibility in that in order to, whether it's height concerns, we can lower it down because with the length of the building, for a lack of a better term, we have a lot of flexibility in flexing up or down in both the hotel and the residential uses, while still maintaining what we think to be, the integrity of the project from an economic viability standpoint. With that, I'm going to let Lucy Ann and Victor talk about the architecture.
Thank you. Thank you.
State your name and address for the record.
Christian Lagrange, architect. Can you hear me?
Yes, make sure you...
Sorry, is my voice? Okay.
Is it possible?
I'm not asking you to understand.
Just talk strong.
Okay, and you have to understand me and hear me too. Anyway, I'm supposed to talk about the architecture, and I really want to, but first let me say that I'm so excited about this project. It's an opportunity that comes to an architect only once or twice. But this is an incredible opportunity. The site you have on the river, the way it is, and with the city hall on the corner, it opens an opportunity that we cannot miss. We have to do it. You have to do it too. So, and that plaza we create also is going to link the city hall here and over there. We have to work on that, like Kurt was stressing. I think it's a very important part of the project, although it was not part of the program. I think it is. And the key also was for the plaza is really going to link the building and the retail. You could say at the base of the building to the river, so you can walk from the retail directly to the river, and the river walk or come back and integrate the both. And I think the plaza, yes, will have to be a bit designed. Yes, we need some landscaping, but we have to define the program, what we're going to do. What do we want to happen on the plaza? There's so many things that can happen every week, every weekend. Anyway, but so the architecture is quasi-classical. The inspiration certainly comes from classical architecture. The pediment on the roof, and we always put a roof on a building. I want a roof over my head, always. Every building I do, I put a roof. This is where we are. This is where we are. But then, being classical is not that classical because it's a very modern building. All the systems in the building are very modern. And then the window size, the fenestration on the building is very different from the retail, from the hotel, from the residential. There is window designed for each of the components. So that's why the mixed use, and it's like a wall, but it's like several buildings that build that wall. And then it turns around and you have this pediment, and the access is on the access. Oh. Can you hear me better? Okay. Just pull it out. Okay, I'm going to try again. And so being called classical is not that classical. They were saying that pediment, which is the access of the residential, really in the access of the city hall. So this is where city hall, the plaza in the building, what we're doing is one thing. And on the other side of River Avenue, we create a wall, but it's not a constant wall. It's a very animated wall. It's different. It's like several buildings on the road, like a main street, and that's how we're trying to recreate on facing the river. So I feel very confident this architecture really fits in St. Charles, because if you look at St. Charles, it's very eclectic. There's a lot of beautiful small buildings, from very classical to Tudor to any kind. And this is going to merge with the downtown. Although it's going to make a statement, you're going to want to see this building. You're going to come from far to see this building, and being in a plaza, I appreciate the architecture. So I know we've done several buildings that are very successful. And I think this is going to be successful. I really believe it belongs in St. Charles. Very, very. Although it's going to make a statement, but you should not be afraid to make a statement. You deserve it in that location. It's an incredible location. You have to understand that. It doesn't happen anywhere else. It does. It's not a war. You don't have this. So you have the site. Let's do it.
Can I answer this one? Yes. My name's Victor Krasnopolsky from West Fulton in Chicago. I wanted to add also that really in approaching this, we were bold, and we wanted to capture your imagination. And one of the things that was the core in all of our design was an effort to create a sense of place. In other words, if we want your memory, if you're a visitor, if you're a resident, if someone says St. Charles, we want it to be this. We want it to be this area that is focused on the municipal building, on this open space, a place where activities occur, but it's something that is definable. It's not an ambiguous sort of, we'll get to it, building and architecture. No, it's a strong design, and the reason is whether it's this or as we work with the city and the community to develop something that is in a closer harmony with the context, the point is, it's a memorable thing. It's something that creates a sense of place, and that is St. Charles. It's not just not just the statue. It's not just a piece of sculpture. It's a location where the community comes together. So.
It is very strong, no question about it, but we should not be afraid of it. We should do it.
Obviously, I agree with Lucienne. We realize how bold the project is, and we think that it's appropriate from St. Charles in many respects. And again, I just want to reiterate, I've spoken with a lot of residents, and I want to make sure that we get this right. I live in the community. I live downtown. and I want to make sure that what we end up doing as a partnership with the city is reflective of all of the comments of the city leadership, of the community, of what the market wants to do. I apologize for, I don't always do the best in public speaking, but this is, and maybe it showed through my presentation a little bit of that, but I'm really passionate about this particular project in many ways, and it's really about what we feel like the community will rally around from the standpoint of its use. We know there's a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that the heights are right, and maybe even, I understand, the importance of some of the visibility corridors, and we were very intentional with the way we designed this one, so that we had some flexibility in the use, but it doesn't mean that we can't go back and visit some of the visibility corridors that have been pointed out. But our initial inspiration was a bold design of a classic European plaza that had a lot of opportunity for the public to be engaged in many ways that connects Potawatomi Park with the rest of downtown St. Charles, because there's so much going on, and we want to make sure that we are trying to be as additive to the community as we can in terms of employment, new business activity for what's already existing. Like I said earlier, we think the induced demand that comes from both the conference center and the hotel itself will bring business that we don't currently have during the week. As an idea, if you look back at Pheasant Run, a lot of their business, which in conference centers typically is. So we're really trying to see what that best mix is. With that, I'd like Mike to talk about a little bit more of the hotel from the study perspective. We did have a hotel study done, and it's important that we talk about that because it's not just hearing it from us. HVS, and Mike, I'm not going to take the thunder away, but we had a hotel study done by HVS. It's a very nationally recognized hotel study, and we want you to understand what those metrics are from them versus just us.
I'll try to be quick and brief so we have time for questions, but the hotel, just to summarize the key facts, 164 keys, and that could go up and down. We might end up with 120. I don't think it'll get larger, but we're in that 120 to 160 range. As I mentioned, 1/3 of the rooms are suites. The average size of the hotel rooms are 520 square feet. So even a regular room is comparable to a junior suite with a living area and a pull-out couch for families and the like. I think the key element of the hotel is its integration and its relationship with the plaza. I mean, those two elements are going to work hand in hand every week of the year, whether it's ice skating in January or holiday parties in December or car shows in April. I think you have a unique opportunity to really make this a destination for the Midwest and the greater Chicagoland area. And having a luxury boutique hotel to complement the plaza, I think, is an integral feature. It also, we have a 5,500 square foot ballroom, 4,000 feet of meeting space. I think the business in terms of social events, weddings, corporate group meetings and the like at this location with a quality product will be significant. And that's why we're positive on it. Now, what are we projecting? Our competitors in the market are according to HVS, are the hotel down in Geneva. I think it's the Harrington, small, 63 keys. You have the Baker Hotel here on the river, which is small, and about 50 or 60 keys as well. And then you have to go down to Naperville to the Arista Hotel on Route 59, part of the Colomos campus, and then Hotel Indigo on Naperville on the Riverwalk, about 140 keys. I think, that's not a lot of competition. It's relatively, compared to what we envision and planning for this hotel, I think we'll be head and shoulders above them, both in rate and occupancy and demand. But, you know, we're being conservative. We are looking at an opening average room rate of $300 a night in 2026, 27 time frame. So if you add a little escalation, a little inflation to that, that's probably comparable to a $250 room night today. Today, I think those 3 or 4 hotels that I just named are running about $170, $180 rate tonight, and stronger 200 plus on weekends. So we're not forecasting some pie in the sky numbers. We're looking at, I think, a realistic pro forma in terms of the way we look at financial feasibility. I also want to emphasize the quality, and this is an all-concrete building, precast facade. It is, and will be a 5-star level in terms of the hotel, and the residential apartments will be very upscale and luxury as well, comparable to, I'm sure, the same level of amenities that the Murphy Group is proposing. So I think the key distinguishing feature between the 2 proposals you saw tonight is with or without a luxury hotel. I mean, their new site plan is very similar to our multifamily plan, an L-shaped building at the end of the site. We think the opportunity here is to create a great plaza, comparable, and the original inspiration for this project was really Plaza San Marcos in Venice. I don't know if you've been there or not, but it's been there for, you know, several hundreds of years, and it's withstood the test of time. And there's events there constantly. And I think you have an opportunity to have that same excitement here at this location. So with that, thank you for your time tonight, and I guess we welcome any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll start off with Mr. Philcotta. If you're ready, sir.
We don't want to read it. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. My first question is, this is Mr. Hurst over here. You said that you were thinking outside the box, correct? You were thinking outside the box.
Mr. Hurst?
Yes, Mr. Hurst, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. You said you were thinking outside the box, correct?
Absolutely.
But in the RFP, we said do not remove any city hall buildings.
That's correct.
So I'm kind of confused as to we said don't do this, but you did it. I don't understand the point of that. We gave you a box. Literally, and you still went outside of it. I mean, that's the point of the RFP, is to give you some direction of what we want and what we don't want. And that was, we had discussions about that. We were very specific that we're not going to take down any city hall buildings. And basically all your renderings here show the buildings being down, I mean, okay? And that concerns me.
Fair enough.
Okay. And now, these are just some questions here.
Sure.
When you build this, 2 questions. In the original proposal, you had stated that you wanted the city to build 2 parking decks, correct? In your original proposal.
I don't think so. I don't think I asked the city to build 2 parking decks, no.
Does anybody else remember that?
1 parking deck.
You had a parking deck by the barber shop over there, and you had 1 right by the substation over here.
There was another proposal that did, this one only had 1.
Right.
We've only had 1. We've had 1 parking deck, and then we've had parking underneath.
I know, but I remember the original plans, which I have at home, showed you requesting 2 parking decks. Okay, but the point is, if, let's say, this project is built as you present it.
Sure.
When people come to City Hall for meetings like this, where are they going to park? Do you have an answer to that? Because I don't see enough parking. You're taking all the spots north of this building. Where are they going to park? I mean, it's hard to park right now, and there's a lot of businesses that those customers use that lot. So where's that parking going to go?
Well, there's a couple of options. One, if we don't change anything that's out front, like I had indicated at the closing of my discussion, then you still have those parking stalls that are still there. So they can be used in any way. But we do have a net positive or net neutral, is the best way to say it, impact on public parking. So
right,
there is
and
public
you're correct
parking.
that you are meeting
There is
I agree
public
with
parking, and yes, it is relocated to a parking deck that's essentially on the corner of State Street and Riverside Avenue. Is it different than the existing surface parking? Sure it is.
Yeah, it is. It's farther from the walk.
We see that as an opportunity to grow the amount of parking to accommodate a different plan in terms of the way we look at it.
Okay.
So there's no question that, you're moving the parking from where it currently exists as surface parking, but it is still public parking, and it is still available or still net positive.
Okay.
So we're not changing, we're not reducing the amount of parking that the public would have access to. We're just relocating it.
And I have other questions, but I just got one more. I'll let everybody else speak too. When you're doing your net zero parking, correct? This is, I don't know the answer. Maybe you can tell me.
Sure.
But if, let's say you do build this center, and let's say you have conventions, do you consider the participants in this convention in your parking study? Where would they park? Because you have all the hotels filled up. I don't know. That's why I'm asking this
It's
a
a fair question. It's really, the way you determine that is you figure out, there's a metric, and we have, I think it's four rooms per parking stall is a standard metric, and 10 rooms, or 10 parking stalls per 1,000 square feet of retail or commercial space. And that's where that comes in, is when you have X square footage, you multiply, you take X square feet of commercial or retail space, including the conference center, divided by 1,000, and multiply that by 10. And that's how you come up with the parking lot count, or the parking space count. So it is accommodated in that retail commercial space, and that's how we get to, we need 268 spots for the demand that we will generate.
So you're saying that for the most part, you're expecting the people who are at the conventions to stay at the hotel. Is that basically what that's what you'd want in a perfect world?
That's to be determined at some level, right? But if you just kind of in your head do the math, 500, person conference center, not everybody's necessarily going to stay in the hotel because we only have 164 rooms planned, and if we lower the number of rooms, that's one of the things that we think is important to understand, that we really see this as an opportunity to promote the rest of downtown St. Charles and other businesses throughout the community, not just our hotel, not just our restaurants. And they call that induced demand. We think induced demand will present a great opportunity for other businesses downtown.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, thanks. So thank you, Frontier, for coming out and putting your best foot forward. Appreciate the thought. Certainly have a lot of experience within this group, so appreciate that. Appreciate the fact that you're a member of this community, you're a resident. You're living downtown and you're walk by this building every day, right? So certainly appreciate that. I like the open space in here. I'd like to see a little more greenery in there somewhere, though. There's a lot of concrete. I get the concept. I get the what you're going for here. I do like the fact that we can kind of make this the center point of the community. I have many neighbors with small children that told me it was a nightmare for them to walk around the city with the Scarecrow Fest this past weekend. It was just too long and too big. So having that concentrated in an area, I think, would be nice for the community. Alderman Lencioni wanted a wow factor. I think this is a wow factor, that's for sure. Question I have regarding sustaining a profitable business with this level of overhead in off-peak times. So do you have any examples in other communities, not Chicago, but other communities where this has worked really well over a long period of time?
Well, the ones that we point to are in the study, and that's the Hotel Indigo in downtown Naperville. That's probably the primary and closest one that we think is a good comparable, and it's in our study, and it becomes the basis of one of our data points, if you will, to support why we think it's relevant from a downtown hotel or community hotel. So that, it's a very similar, you know, sized hotel as well. If I remember, what was the count on that? 120-something rooms, I believe. 100, yeah, so, right. I don't want to speak on that.
Yep, no, that's good. And I reference a study. I just want to make sure folks know that there's examples out there they could look at.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point of doing the hotel study, if I can kind of state that obvious component, is that, you know, they look at all of those components very unbiased. They talk about, you know, what the demand is and the average daily rates and all of those things, induced demands for Naperville, for the Harrington in Geneva. Yes, they're a little bit different hotel concepts. Some are bigger, some are smaller, but they call them primary competitors because they are very similar in what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the finish levels.
And just one comment on Chicago in general. It happens to be one of the most seasonal markets in the United States in terms of the high and the low. You know, January being the worst month for the hotel business in February, and, you know, July and August, September being the best. Actually, May through November is where you make all your money, and you hold on tight, you know, December 15th through March 31st, and that's just the business.
Appreciate that. Question around where the hotel guests would actually go to register. Is that on the back side of the building, or where do they actually pull up and unload and register? Where does that happen at?
Well, the entry to the hotel will be on the front. You're looking at the back of the hotel that opens out to the terrace and the plaza. But that's the front door. Go back one.
That's street side, right?
Yeah, that's Riverside.
This is Riverside.
Yep.
And there's a circular drop-off for a hotel.
We considered any impact, if any, to the fire station that's right there, right? As you can imagine, a lot of vehicles coming in and out, a lot of stuff happening there. What's your perspective on that?
Well, go ahead.
Well, I'm not, we actually can get a traffic engineer to comment on it in terms of the amount of vehicles in the fire station. Probably ambulances, I would suspect, coming and go. But
we're not changing the width of Riverside Avenue. It pretty much is staying where it is now. So they'd still be able to do, you know, many of the things that they're doing right now. I understand that they're putting the fire trucks in the street. They're doing that. Would there be some coordination that we would have to do? Sure. Most of that stuff's during the day, during the week. We don't see that as necessarily conflicting with. Doesn't mean that it complements, but we don't see it conflicting with it. And what Mike was speaking of, and I want to take this opportunity to do two things. One is this is a circular drive that goes inside the hotel for the guests, so it gets the guests that are coming in and dropping off inside off of the envelope of Riverside Avenue. And there you can either drop off and go park your car or have valet do it, however that works. There's another opportunity, and this is what, you know, we want to point out the flexibility in what we're trying to accomplish here. There's another opportunity from a design standpoint. We understand that the Old City Hall and all of those are very important to the city. And by no means, I'm going back to the comments as well as my closing discussion, that we don't have an interest in that, and if it stays, it stays. But we wanted to envision the fact that you could make this an entrance to the hotel as well. If it's not, it's still part of the plan because the red brick building, the Old City Hall, does not conflict with that design right there. It's just removed from this current rendering. But there's still an opportunity, and that's that circle that goes there, to get people off of Riverside Avenue as they're dropping off for whether it's a convention and they're not staying at the hotel, or they're staying at the hotel and they're coming and going. Those are, I think, two key components of the hotel use, if you will. At this point, go ahead.
I was just, I mean, people are using the word convention. I'd rather call it weddings and corporate group meetings. This is not a convention hotel, just to clarify that. And the ballroom is on the upper right-hand side of the floodplate here. There's an opportunity when there is a wedding or an event at night that people can drop off and valet at the end of the project and that through that circle, rather than having everybody get congested at the front of the hotel. So event in and out parking and valet would be off to the side, off of Riverside.
And in addition to that, and it goes to the same, part of the conversation, this area right here, this is obviously the first level of the rendering. This area right here is the drive-through for residents' visitor parking. Doesn't mean that a resident is not going to come in and do something, momentarily to drop somebody off or pick somebody up. But that's where we see visitors coming in and dropping people off, coming and going. And then we have a parking entrance, if you will, that goes under the hotel right here. So again, the traffic is moving in, going underneath the hotel, or going underneath the resident and the hotel, so that the use that is the resident and the hotel is substantially contained underneath the building, so that you're not congesting Riverside Avenue.
Thank you.
Rita, go ahead.
Yeah. Concerning the hotel study, why wasn't the Q Center incorporated in that?
I didn't.
The center is the former Arthur Anderson building.
Right now, it's our main corporate space, and
what was the question? Why was it not?
why wasn't it in your hotel study?
Well, it is being
I don't see it as a, I don't know.
a competitive hotel.
One person talk, please, so we can all hear.
You can ask HVS, but they don't really consider it to be a hotel from the perspective of, yes, there are hotel room nights there, there's convention business, but it's not a direct competitor. They call them primary competitors, and that's what the primary competitors were: the Hotel Baker, the Harrington, the Hotel Arista.
But when you talk
Indigo,
about
which are traditional hotels,
right,
and then some of the secondary non-primaries were the Hampton Inn, all of those types of hotels that are up and down Route 64 for the most part, but they did not see the Q Center as a traditional hotel in that sense.
Right. But I also heard in the presentation that it's important to get that during the week business, right? And to get those events, Q Center is very much involved in all that.
Sure.
So that's why, and I even saw your charts, and corporate use was one of those, and I would think that Q Center would be one of those, would be a competition for corporate events.
Yes, and they will bring, I want to not use the word convention, but they do have corporate
events.
Corporate events, weddings, charitable events. They have all kinds of events. Yes, they're complimentary from a use standpoint, that they will bring potential hotel guests to downtown, but we also have the opportunity to do the corporate events and all of those for the hotel self-contained.
Right.
We don't, and nor did HVS see the Q Center as a traditional hotel in the sense that it was a primary competitor.
I understand. But I also think that it speaks to the feasibility. And that's why I was wondering why it wasn't included. Even though it's not your traditional hotel per se, but if there's ever an event there, they house everybody. So as you said yourself that you stayed there back in the day, right? But anyway, I think that is, an important comparable, especially if you're looking for event space, that I think it should have been incorporated in that comparison. And I've heard from your supporters, and I'll give you this, Kurt. You said you engaged, you met with 300 residents, and you haven't indeed engaged. Look at this room. You've indeed engaged the public. And in some of the feedback we're getting from your supporters, they say that there's this plan incorporates river activity. How so? Besides looking at it, I understand. Yeah.
I understand. So I think this is probably one of the better, I'd like to show you start with, this is, looking from the river and the river walk. It's hard to capture every component in there, but the idea is that we want to make sure that we completely revitalize the river walk. That's why we have a new barrier wall, pavers, connectivity from the standpoint of landscaping, from the Riverwalk to the plaza. The steps up is very intentional because, as you know, this is all in the floodplain, so we have to address those items no differently than what was done across the river on the First Street Plaza. It's got the Riverwalk that's down lower at the river elevation, and you step up to the plaza. So you definitely have to address that, and this is how we did it. We think that it's an important putting lots, I mean, you can see here that this is a small car show. We see that as part of one of the many activities that we can have. You can have farmers markets on a Saturday morning. Currently, they're being done at the Hotel Baker. We see it as an opportunity to bring the public to that, whether it's St. Charles or other communities. If you have a robust farmers market, the public is going to engage in that. And there's lots of ways to shape that. You know, and those are just a couple of examples. In addition to, you know, music, you know, I don't want to take away from the current activity of music in the park. I'm a big fan. I go all the time. But we can do it in addition to that. We can do it here in lieu of that. But that's a very public space that we see being used in a similar fashion.
Right. I'm just asking, I guess, engagement of the river.
Yeah.
You know, because I've told you, I think it's a beautiful, great plan. I just think it's the wrong location. And so then when I hear, you know, people say, well, but it engages the river, I'm not sure, except for a lovely walk and a view, how it engages with the river. I guess that's what I'm literally asking. How does it engage with the river? I mean,
I guess the way to say it is, I don't see a lot of difference between what we're proposing here as a river walk and a plaza that has a lot of activity on it than what currently exists right now with some green space and mostly parking. If you look at that current existing space, it's a parking lot. I get that it's close to the municipal center.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying we engage the river now.
I understand, but I think it's important to, so as you introduce people and activity to the plaza and that area, they're naturally going to, you know, whether it's just passively viewing the river as they're walking past it, going from Potawatomi Park to downtown, or if we get to the point that we can get the active river corridor project going, then how do we envision that being part of this? I don't put that in here because I don't want to be presumptuous that we can or cannot do it. I think it's very important, and I would love for that to happen. And we think that having the hotel there gives you an opportunity to generate additional revenues for the city that give you the seed money, as it were, to start going towards working with the grants and getting the design work that you need to do to fully engage the river through the active corridor. No different than the Union Pacific. I know that the Park District currently has, you know, grant money for the Union Pacific acquisition. I don't want to step out of turn and say what the parameters of that are, but if you have shovel-ready projects with seed money, engineering, and it's all paid for, then they move a little bit easier. And I think that the revenue model that we're proposing gives you the opportunity to start doing those things. So from the perspective of being engaging the river and the Union Pacific, we hope that that revenue model generates the opportunity to design and implement those plans that are already being talked about. And with that, just think, you know, and I don't have a picture of the river corridor plan in here, but if you just think about how that current plan works, it brings, it anticipates a lot of extra green space coming from what is currently our existing wall as a perimeter, if you will, and moving into the river to add green space as opposed to just water. Is that right or wrong? Don't have the answer to that. I think that's a community conversation. There's great opportunity to do that and preserve boatability downtown and boards and all of those things, but definitely we see this as a catalyst to be able to do those projects and engage the river.
Okay, thank you. And I do have an overall concern with project feasibility. Mm-hmm. You know, it's much easier to add on to a project than it is to nip and tuck and take away. And so some concerns with the feasibility, it might be, you know, I think, could this be too much? You know, the plan has a lot of huge asks of the city, a lot, and the neighborhood. And these concerns on project feasibility are traffic and parking, which, you know, we can talk forever on. And I think a project this big, you know, a study should have been done prior to any commitment, you know, before moving forward. And the financing, you kind of explain, you know, how you see the TIF happening. Perhaps that's a conversation for us to have, you know, with Derek and Bill, you know, moving forward. And neighborhood buy-in is huge, and I know that was, you know, your hope with your meetings. And really, this, I talked to Russ, and this was taken out when we changed it from an RFP to an RFC, was the geotechnical analysis.
Right.
And I know that when Century Corners, whatever that's called across the street, when that was built, it didn't take long for that to go under. And it was a lot of it because they couldn't, it was too expensive to do the infrastructure. They couldn't get, it was required of the city to get the utilities under the ground, and they weren't able to do that. And so I think that that's kind of, what if this can't be built? You know, what happens then? You know, what if you know, when you have so much parking that's going to be underground, a building this size needs foundation, you know, good, strong foundation, and what happens when we get in there and it can't be built? I mean, what's the plan B here?
Well, I think the way to answer that is that we are, you know, as I said in the presentation, that we are expecting that there will be some form of partnership with the city on a non-recourse basis. It's a revenue sharing. And as you go through this, you try and discover all of those things. No different than anybody else that's going to be doing work on this site one way or the other. You're not going to be able to anticipate every, you know, component that's in there. Have we thought about some of the design? Certainly we have. It's one of the reasons we elevated the Riverwalk and the Plaza, because that partly takes away some of the requirement to be underground. We didn't go 2 stories underground or 3 stories underground for that reason. We didn't want to try and anticipate those costs. So we feel like we're trying to find that balance, and there's definitely going to be the geotechnical studies that you have to do to understand those things more fully. And it will require, and I'm not going to hide behind it, some level of partnership from the city, but it's on a non-recourse basis.
Okay.
With that, we have an HVS hotel study. It was a critical component of what we talked, or what we wanted to do, is make sure that it was feasible. We feel very comfortable in that. We've had a lot of long conversations with that. We have a great partner in that regard. And as we work through this plan, we will find what the best mix is, both from a residential and hotel component and restaurant component. We see that there's definitely an opportunity for demand downtown St. Charles for all of them. What layer is that? Maybe it's only 3 stories of hotel. Maybe it's 4 stories. This is our bold dream, and as we dream through it, we will figure out exactly what that means. And that will also take into account the interaction we've had with the community. And is it, you know, it's currently 58 feet tall, with the exception of this area, and I want to point that out. This section, just the gable part, is 86 feet. This plate right here, with just this small area, is 70 feet, but everything from here at this level all the way around is 58 feet. There are some components within The downtown St. Charles area, this is the first one that you think of, the municipal center. That's 86 feet, 85 feet plus or minus, without, being able to get out there and measure it physically. That's as good an estimate as we're going to get. The tower on the Hotel Baker is approximately 81 feet. The reason I point those out is because we see this as our boldest effort at this, and as we kind of figure out what the right mix is, both economically and what the community wants. I'm wide open to the fact that if the community wants this to be 3 stories, then we'll figure out how to work through this.
Okay. Well, that's all. That's fine. I'm sure there's be some flexibility, but you keep pointing to the fact that you want to partner with the city, and I'm just going to say that to Mr. Silkaitis' point, that a good start is like not following directions. Not following directions, taking out buildings and not putting them back when you're asked to put them back. That's just a small step. I mean, there's a list, and when you're asking for a financial partnership, that's a huge ask too.
Chairman, just reminding everybody, we are approaching the end of the allotted time for this developer. I certainly want council to be able to ask all their questions, but if we could just make them concise and the responses concise as well for equitability.
Ryan, go ahead.
Do you want to ask your last?
No. Okay. I got 3 more, so go ahead.
So I will skip past, comments, questions about height, style, all that, and go to, can you convert a hotel that, for whatever reason, doesn't work? Could you convert that into luxury apartments?
Yes.
Right. So what I appreciate about this, and from day one when we spoke, was, often developers come and we get a more traditional kind of picture of like, well, here's what we think that can work here. And what I liked the most about this was it was absolutely outside the box, and I appreciate some of the comments about, not touching this and following the FP, but what I like about this is it shows that we're going to try and do something different. Now, if we get through the different points about, funding and height, and it's just not doable, then it's not doable. But I do appreciate that we're taking a swing at doing something different, and that we're not just trying to come in and say, well, we can build 140 apartments here, and it's a good plan, but this is something unique, and I think it draws people in, so I appreciate that. That being said, I think that we're a long way away, given the amount of questions and topics and concerns. Sure. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get there, but I do absolutely appreciate this attempt at taking a swing. Who maintains ownership over this long term? Do you guys envision this being Frontier and all the way through, or do you guys? Okay, so long term investment in the project, long term ownership in the project, all the way through.
These are what we call legacy assets for us.
Okay, and then I'll give the mic up. The reality that you guys, and I'm painting with a broad brush, the reality that a project like this, assuming we can get past all the hurdles, can be done considering all the other things that are going on around town. The reality that this can be undertaken.
Well, I think that's what the hotel study speaks to, is the induced demand and what it will generate. It's new traffic downtown.
I don't mean the hotel, I mean Frontier being able to manage this project with the rest of its portfolio around town with River East, Arcata, everything.
I think it enhances it. I think that it gives us the opportunity to have a bigger, I think there's 2 questions to that and 2 answers, if I have enough time.
Just be concise.
Yeah, be concise. I've been doing this for 30 years. Yes, I'm a smaller developer. What I found was when I was a bigger developer 25 years ago, I had a bigger footprint.
Yeah.
And I had a bigger footprint in employees. I had 300 employees. And I sold that company to Lennar. It's the second largest home builder in the country. And they sold it because we knew how to manage those assets. And I have intentionally done different things over the years, and now I'm focused on St. Charles because that's where I want to be personally. I have a younger son who's involved in the business, and he has similar, opportunities and desires. But when we decide what we're going to do from the management standpoint and ownership standpoint, we make sure that we can develop the footprint, and that's what we call it, a footprint, in order to manage that. And as our assets grow in St. Charles, our footprint will grow as well. And so I'm very comfortable with it. I've managed, an owned company that's got 300 employees. So we're comfortable in our ability, in addition to having partnered with Mike Reschke of the Prime Group, who's got a much bigger footprint than we do, as well as the depth in the hotel, and that was a very intentional decision to partner with them.
Todd, fire away.
So I love the idea of being bold. I won't comment on the design. It's an opinion. It can be attractive. A lot of responsibility comes with being bold. So one responsibility is trust. So what you've heard from this council so far, and you're going to hear it more on that, and I'm sure, is exceeding expectations is not always a good thing. Something to think about. Second thing, communicating with the community. Great that you reached out. Great that you garnered support. But you also divided the community. Double-edged sword. Something to think about if you're looking to partner with these folks up here. Third thing, with being bold, is when you throw around non-recourse as though it's a get-out-of-jail-free card, it ain't. There's reputational risk, and there is no question that it is just meaningless for a city to walk away from its obligations or not feel the pressure of owning up to them. So,
I get all those things.
Well, you may, but I really think you got to think about it. And then my fourth comment is, studies aside, feasibility aside, this council's responsibility is the success of the entire community.
Sure.
So, this hotel's going to be successful, great. What's its impact on the Baker Hotel? What are you doing to think about that? How are you approaching that? What is your, because again, being bold brings big responsibility.
Sure.
How, you're going to throw 4 restaurants here. How are you thinking about what the impact is going to be on the rest of the community, and specifically, First Street, for example, which was a different vision for this city, years ago. You got to think about all of those things. You don't get to just sit and produce a fancy drawing with a bold statement and not think about all of that. And all I'm saying is, my expectation is, if this were to move forward, you, Kurt, you need to think about it.
I do.
Okay.
And if I can just make a couple of quick comments, I'd let Bill Mitchell, who has been my attorney for 25 years, knows full well what we do, and we look heavily to him in terms of how are we going to put that financing partnership together. So we don't take that lightly, to answer your question. We understand your point.
Good.
The other point about being bold with the community. We have another project that's recently been approved, and thank you all for working with us for a year and a half to get to that. We understand that. One of the things that we heard in the very beginning of that process, have you talked to the community? And my answer at the time was no. We did it in the concept review process. If everybody remembers those comments, we turned that around this time and said, we're going through a concept review process, but I want to understand what the city wants. And I was very open, and you can ask anybody that's in the room, when we had meetings, and some of the meetings were 80 people at a time, some of the meetings were 20 people at a time, some of the meetings were 5 at a time, and everywhere in between. But I was very transparent about what we were doing. I asked questions, they asked questions, I told them what my honest opinions were, and they landed where they thought they should land. I did not try and create, a division if that's what the result was. What I tried to do was make sure that I was being as transparent as I possibly could. I think that's a fair statement, and anybody would, on both sides of that equation, because some of the meetings, there were a lot of tough questions, and I answered them as honestly as I could. I think those are probably the 2 biggest things that I can respond to in your comments.
Speaking of financing and tough questions, I'm going to ask you an uncomfortable one right now.
Sure.
reading some newspapers this week, and I did notice that some of your developments were, the taxes have not been paid on time. Is that something that we should be concerned about?
It's a typical practice for me. I don't know how anybody else handles it, but we do most of that in the fourth quarter unless it's in an escrow with the lender. And anything that we own on our own, we typically do from a tax perspective in the fourth quarter. That's generally our, and all of those are paid now that it's the fourth quarter.
So whatever was owed was paid now?
Yeah. Yes, it is. 100%.
And then to follow up.
So as soon as we got past the end of the fourth quarter.
Okay. So, and records will reflect that?
Absolutely. And you can actually go back in history as far back as you want, look at the tax records of the things that I own, and it's the same pattern. It has nothing to do with anything other than the way we do our tax planning.
Okay. And then a building on this scale, just based on some other projects that have happened in town, who would be the general contractor on something like this to assure that?
For a building like this, we will look outside for a general contractor. Again, that's something that, the Prime Group and us have done in the past for scaled projects. So, I don't envision general contracting this on my own, is the answer.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. First of all, size of the project. What based on current projections do you anticipate the total cost to complete?
I'm sorry?
Based on the current concept?
The current, our budget is about $153 million plus or minus.
Do you have thoughts on the hotel component, like pro forma, an annual revenue?
I want Mike to speak to that, but ballpark, the hotel component is about close to $10 million in hotel room sales. The restaurant bar component is approximately $4 to $4.5 million. The spa component is somewhere between $750,000 to $1 million.
Okay. I want to definitely understand the hotel. With the rest of it, dollars per square foot you can put in.
Yeah. And the hotel is based on 164 rooms. At, and this is all part of the hotel study, at an average daily rate, as Mike spoke to, with an occupancy in that high 60, low 70 range.
Okay. Wanted to get those first. So I'm trying to think of the right way to give comments back to that. Lucia, Eric Check, I think we're best friends. I loved everything that she said. If Jenna Sawicki is listening, the director of the Alliance, through our conversations, I always said, let's not talk about stealing ideas from Geneva. Let's not talk about stealing ideas from Naperville. If you're going to borrow ideas, borrow them from Paris, borrow them from London, borrow them from Venice. In taking a look at this open space, and I'm trying to think of what other iterations look like, I find it incredibly exciting. The amount of things that the community can do in there, and one of the things that it will be very important to me is how is that owned? What access does the public have? I want to make sure that the public has as much access to that as possible, and that from people strolling around, that's a place where you can spend your time. A lot of things can happen without it being very cumbersome. I want to see a great partnership on that space. It has to go that way. But it's absolutely spectacular. I think it's something that when you say do something that's bold, when doing it bold, also do it beautiful, because I also can think back to 40 years and remember when we had a gravel parking lot, 3 blocks off the city center, and St.Charles wasn't going in the right direction, so we were dying. I remember when Craig Frank telling me stories about, reinvesting in the Baker Hotel because it was an old folks home. We have come a long way as a city, and and the things that we did that have made us great in our last 100, 125 years are because, people had vision and did exciting things. I think this is exciting. Now, that being said, I also think it's really big, it's really dense, we got a lot of things to think about. I don't mind that you took a shot at some of the buildings in City Hall. I just also don't support it at all. I don't mind, thinking of creative, amazing things that we need to do, because the second that we start just being okay with standard mediocre, you're just starting to die, and we are going in another direction, and we have to have courage. But Alderman Baycroft, I take your words very seriously too. We have to be able to do it. We have to know that we can do it the right way. But if you're not going to start by dreaming big and doing amazing things, what's the point? You know, and we need to catch up on doing some awesome things. I will say, appreciate some of the vision that I've seen from you in St. Charles. We took a dead, burned-out bank that nobody did anything with and turned it into the best patio that I could ever imagine, and nobody else saw it. You know, and I mean, some of it's just taking a look at the things that are right in front of you and seeing them in a different way and making them amazing. So when I go back to the things that are important to me, I appreciate the parking, you know, because we're going to lose, you know, the uses that are there, and I'm not exactly sure how we calculated the net change, but I like that you put in a bunch of parking. There's not parking right there that's convenient to the municipal center, but, you know, I mean, we're suburban. We can walk an extra half block. I'm parked all the way at the end right now. It's not a problem. You know, so I appreciate that. I appreciate this gorgeous open space, and I think that you've made a huge impact. Now, can we build it exactly the way that you see? Thank you all very much. But I just think it's good. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Go ahead, David.
Yes, I'll be pithy. So as it is a bold plan, to Rita's point, thank you for mentioning that. Perhaps another site. You know, we have other sites in the city. I just want to focus on the hotel component, though. You know, I'm reading I read through the study, and particularly the executive summary, of course, and I don't know, I just don't see any data that suggests to me that we're just dying to have an Arista. No, correct me if I'm wrong, you're suggesting that the competitors are the Arista, is that right? And the Indigo in Naperville? Sir, so in essence, you're suggesting that the Hotel Arista, which is at the corner of Route 59 and Route 88, could function adequately in downtown St. Charles?
I didn't understand your question.
My point is that I just don't see any compelling data that says that we're dying to have a hotel like the Arista in downtown St. Charles. Is there any, was there any consideration of the fact that these hotels, these prime, what do you call them, prime competitors, are off of major highways? I mean, to me, that's kind of an important consideration. Is that?
Well, I don't think the Hotel Arista on Route 59 is going to be competitive to this hotel at all.
Oh, I thought
it's the closest competitor that HVS could find in a 5-mile radius.
Okay.
To be a primary competitor. There are very few opportunities to build a 5-star boutique hotel on the Fox River in the center of a city like St. Charles.
No, and that's fine. I appreciate your comments. I'm just saying the data, to me, it just seems the boldness doesn't fit this particular site, nor do we have the particular infrastructure like highways and Naperville is not. I hesitate to compare St. Charles to Naperville. I don't want St. Charles to be Naperville. I want to be different from Naperville. That's just my comments.
It would be much better than Naperville.
Well, we're much better than Naperville?
On par with Venice.
Oh, I see.
No, we got to go back to Plaza San Marcos in Venice.
And lastly, the Plaza, my one comment, I'll give it over to my colleague here. You know, last time I checked, I thought the First Street Plaza was supposed to be the center of our town, not we're kind of drawing our eyes to this side, and I kind of want to keep our attention on that particular area. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. So just to echo Steve's comments, I had the Chronicle from last week and these are tax delinquent properties. So are you saying that they're all paid up? The ones that are listed in this newspaper are paid up, and they can confirm it? Our staff can confirm it? Okay.
In last year's and the years before.
Okay, because I looked at the assessor's site at 5 o'clock today, and they were still shown as unpaid. So maybe staff can confirm that, but.
You can stamp that, you can confirm it, you can do whatever you want to do with that. You can look at the tens of millions of dollars in taxes I've paid over the last 30 years.
Yeah, I'm not interested in that. What I look at is what's in the paper from last Thursday, and it shows the Arcada's not being paid in the property taxes.
I answered the question regarding how I do that from a tax planning standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need to go any further. You want to verify it out.
Okay. And then the other thing is taking down 2 historical buildings when we asked you not to at the first meeting, to me, is a trust issue. It's a breach of trust. And so, for me, that's a problem. That's not a collaborator, with the people. So the other thing is the plaza. That is privately owned, correct?
We currently envision the Plaza part, which is the elevated portion, to be privately owned. That's correct.
Right. So I don't know how we can have community gatherings or the public can enjoy something that's privately owned. And it's just, to me, I got emails from constituents saying, yeah, it'll be great to have 2 acres of open public space that we can use. And that's not an accurate statement. It's privately owned space that you can use when they're ready to let you use it. And I don't envision a wedding allowing people just to walk by and use it. We'll get the sidewalk and we'll get to take a look at all that stuff. That's all we're going to get. So I asked myself, where is the public benefit from this development? And I don't see anything in here that benefits the people in the community. And the biggest thing is, what is the impact on the quality of life for the people that live in the Potawatomi neighborhood? They're going to have to deal with traffic, parking. Who knows what they're going to deal with over there? So that concerns me. Those things concern me. Listen, the drawing, it's a beautiful drawing for a different location. You did a wonderful job with it, but this is not the right location for it.
Can everybody please hold your applause? Let this process unfold, please. Just close everything down.
So I think the hotel study, I read that as well, and to me it's not conclusive. There's nothing in there saying, you know what, we have to have a hotel here. I can appreciate the thought behind it. I really can. But there's nothing in it that's screaming we need a hotel. And I was looking at what they call the statement of assumptions. And there's a lot of assumptions in there, things that have to happen to make sure it is really, really successful. And the other thing is, I'm not giving away any land in that area for free to anybody to develop a piece of property there. That land belongs to the people in this community. If you want it, you got to pay for it, plain and simple. I'm not giving it away to anybody. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ed.
Last again here.
But not least.
So you have opened the bird's eye view, which I think that's a good, slide to start with. So, Kurt, can you talk a little bit more about the public interaction, what they will be allowed to do on that plaza? Because there's a white railing or fence in the back. I'm assuming that's for some restaurants behind the hotel, possibly. I don't know if you have other thoughts on what that is.
Where are you talking about when you're trying?
Where the red awnings are. There's
back here.
Yeah.
All of that. Okay. So I think that's the hotel terrace is the way to say it.
Oh, okay.
I think the way to describe that is when you have the public being up there benefits everybody. In whether it's us as the owner of the hotel, you want as many people engaged up there as you possibly can.
Sure.
So we are incentivized, obviously from an economic standpoint, to have as many people in that plaza as we possibly can. So that's the foundation of the conversation, right? And if you look at plazas all over the world, which is really our inspiration, not Naperville. We did not look to Naperville to say, hey, let's figure out what we can build that looks like Naperville.
I will add, I have been to San Marcos, and it is a beautiful
We went
plaza,
all over the world and said, how do we design something that engages the public? And that's what they've been doing for centuries. They're public spaces, and we see this as a very similar experience. From an ownership perspective, it's a hybrid of that, right? Some of those spaces are owned by the private developers that are doing things along the front of their building, if you will, so they can have outdoor experiences. Not really much different than some of the things that we're already experiencing downtown. The way we looked at that is we wanted to combat it from a different direction and say, we're open to all of the robust programming and working with the city that they want to do farmers markets on Saturday morning. And how you do that is licensing.
Sure.
And licensing, whether it's permanent or temporary, you can predetermine all of those things. And you can schedule out farmers markets for the next 5 years, and the city can license that from us. And the conversation has already been had. How do you monetize it? Whether it's a fee or or the people in the farmers market paying the fee. but it's really the same thing that's already happening in reverse. And we plan on working with the community, the city, and anybody else that wants to use that plaza on a long-term basis. And on all those unprogrammed times, it's to our economic advantage to have as many people on that plaza as we possibly can.
So if people are just walking along, you know, the Riverwalk that you're going to redo or redevelop, they'll have access to walk through that plaza most of the time? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the restaurants that are there will probably have outdoor where you just walk up to sit outside and all that as well.
Dining, yes, absolutely. We want to encourage as much as we possibly can. And I think the only difference in this and other, I hesitate to say where, I don't want to get trapped, but other experiences where the public is engaged in what's happening in an open space. And yes, it's privately owned. Yes, we want to manage it so that we can license it back and forth to the city, no different than they're doing with the private right now.
Sure.
And as you know, that comes with its set of complications. But that's an opportunity that, you know, we think can be, you know, a partnership.
And then outside, I know you showed a possibility of having a car show and all that, but there's not going to be any traffic on that plaza outside of the hotel and or the apartments that you talked about, or the condos.
No, that's not envisioned to have a traffic pattern on it. Does it, you know, it'll be a hard surface that you can drive on, but, you know, and it's just to address it, we have the well positioned not outside of the building footprint, and you would be able to drive trucks and do whatever you need to service it if that ever became part of the, you know, need. And so you could access that, but it doesn't mean that there's going to be a traffic pattern out there by any means.
And then the Riverwalk itself that you're going to redo, is that, we don't have to get into the exact point, but it's coming from the municipal center to where your property line ends, basically?
Correct, all the way, you know, from essentially, you know, wherever the boundary of the RFP is on the north side to essentially the municipal center. And is there an opportunity to redo some of that existing that would be south of the RFP boundary? That's to be left in the partnership, you know, how do you work through that?
Okay.
While we're there, why don't we do it? Is the way to say it.
And then, I don't want to spend a lot of time with this, I know we're in a hurry, but the wall that along the Riverwalk, how high is that? A couple feet, 3, 4 feet, 2 feet?
To be determined by the engineers.
Okay.
It's going to be.
Something we could do later.
It's going to be, you're talking about from the Riverwalk up to the plaza?
No, from the wall along the river.
From the water to, there's going to be a lot of factors that go into it, right?
Yeah.
You know, one of them is going to be what's the interactivity of what could be an opportunity for the Active River Corridor project. The Corps of Engineers is currently contemplating and already taking out dams to the north.
Right.
How does that impact us? There's a lot of engineering that's going to have to go in to figure that out.
Yeah, because
but leaving it as it currently exists, number one, it's failing. It needs to be repaired.
Sure.
And why don't we address it in the opportunity that we're putting out?
And then lastly, I will say, the architecture, before I saw any of these proposals, I was envisioning something, not to say I wasn't thinking out of the box, obviously this is out of the box, but something that might have mirrored or bookend what's been developed on First Street. So I really do like this style, one, because it's not First Street, and at the same time it does transition to and blends in, I think, very well with this building, which is important to me, and I'll leave it at that, but I do like this style a lot.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Zellman, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, what we're going to do is keep in mind again, there's going to be no decision made tonight. We're going to open it up to public comment now. Please, after someone's done speaking, if you can hold your food and eyes and applause, that way we can get through a lot of people. We want to hear all the feedback. The feedback will be directed directly at us. The meeting will have a hard stop at 10. If we need to continue on, we will continue on the 14th. So we're going to start off with people in this room first for public comment. Please state your name and address when you come to the podium. Thank you very much.
And Chairman, just as a reminder, this will not be an opportunity for the public to ask questions directly of the developers, just comments directed at the committee.
That's correct.
Good evening. Members of the committee, my name is Mike Canute. I am a resident, taxpayer, and voter in the city of St. Charles, and I am the third generation of Canutes living here in this town. My grandfather came to St. Charles in 1939 and opened his dental practice on Anderson Boulevard. My grandma, Bern Canute, opened Canute Realty in town at the back porch of her home at 7th and Mosedale in 1959. It's a business that's still operating in town today and run by my brother Chris and his wife Tanya. My father, Charles Canute, was an 80-year resident of this town and practiced law here for almost 50 years. My mom, Esther, she's here tonight, has lived in St. Charles since 1964 when she married my dad, and since then has been active in the community and actually ran the family real estate business for a number of years. I grew up in Wild Rose on the west side, but I now live on the east side at the corner of Route 25 and State Avenue, just 4 blocks from this proposed development. I live there with my wife, Eileen. The Canutes have a long history in St. Charles. We love this town, and I'm happy to have an opportunity to stand up and speak out against these projects here tonight. First of all, I want to thank the committee for taking some public comment here because I think it's very important. And I want to thank the developers, both of them, for their presentations because this is very important for the community to see. And I'm glad that they get to see it here. And I'm here to speak not only for myself, but I was asked on behalf of many of our neighbors and friends to come and make these remarks tonight. And I want to let you know, my wife Eileen and I, along with other members of our neighborhood, walked the neighborhood last weekend, and in less than 6 days got over 400 signatures on a petition against these proposed developments. You all have seen that. That's part of the public record. And I was actually told here tonight that the petition is now up to over 600 signatures, and I was asked if we had more tonight because people want to continue to sign it. I actually have comments that are posted online with those petitions that have been, this is 3 pages worth of comments that have just come in since last night. So the community is continuing to speak out and make themselves heard on this. The key here is that more and more people are being made aware of this every day, and they're not happy with these proposals. The community does not want a large-scale, oversized project like this on this particular site. Now, my comments tonight, I'm going to be very brief, but they primarily address the frontier development proposal because that one is the biggest and most egregious of the proposals that have been presented. And my comments will be blunt, but they come from the heart. And this is a bold plan, and I'm sure they expected to hear a bold response. I have about 20 reasons that I could set forth tonight as to why Plaza San Carlos is a terrible idea for St. Charles, but I'm going to make only 4 in the interest of time because I know there are other citizens who want to speak here tonight. 4 very important points. And then the first point, very quickly, echoes some of the comments made by some of the council members here tonight, and that is a failure to follow directions that the city set forth by frontier development. The city has put in place ordinances and adopted plans that express the vision and long-term health of our city. Those are good things that should be honored and followed. Things like the height ordinance, things like the 2020 comprehensive plan update, things like the comprehensive plan that says that the riverfront should be open, green, and accessible. The Frontier Development Plan violates all of these things. It violates the height ordinance. It didn't honor the 2020 comprehensive plan. And it not only ignores, but is completely antithetical to the Central Historic District in which it sits. The purpose of the Historic District is to, quote, protect the character of areas which have significant historic, architectural, or aesthetic features. That's a quote from the city website. One question, why are we even considering this on the site on which it's proposed? Why is this developer allowed to break the rules and not even listen to the city and comply with the request for concept proposal that was set forth? I assume that the city included things like the height ordinance and the 2020 comprehensive plan and honoring historic buildings in their request for concept proposal because it wanted the developers to pay attention to those things. Frontier clearly did not. In fact, amazingly, with regard to the Central Historic District, the city's invitation to developers, I'm reading right from the request for concept proposal. It says, the project site is located within the Central Historic District in downtown St. Charles. The proposal should take into consideration the quality and style of architecture in downtown and how the proposed building complements the existing built environment. The proposed building should complement the area in which it sits. Now, Frontier said in their materials that their plan was inspired by Trafalgar Square. Tonight we heard mention of Venice and London. And we hear about potentially tearing down historic buildings. This design does not fit St. Charles, and they're trying to impose a European design on our community. We know who we are. This town is the pride of the Fox, and it's a great town. We are not Europe. We don't need a European design. The bottom line, Frontier Development did not listen to the city. It ignored the request for proposal. It broke the rules, and this proposal never should have gotten off square one. Point number 2, traffic. Traffic. We talked a lot about parking, heard a lot about parking tonight, but Plaza San Carlos does not talk about traffic. The plan doesn't talk about traffic, but all the residents of the neighborhood are talking about the traffic that this dense development will create. Where will all that traffic go? The 164 hotel rooms, 107 apartments, 4 restaurants, multiple commercial ventures. How many cars a day will that generate? What will the traffic flow be at different times of the day? We don't know because no study was done. One of the council members made the point that a study should have been done with this proposal. It was not. No one has analyzed that or even asked those questions. This plan, in fact, both plans point toward First Avenue as the ingress and egress from there. I don't know how the traffic is going to be able to get in and out of there. That is supposed to accommodate that exit point all residents, hotel guests, business patrons, employees, deliveries, not to mention people involved in city council business, citizens trying to get into City Hall, and the fire trucks, which have already been mentioned. First Avenue will simply be a choke point that will make our already bad traffic problem unbearable. We don't need a study to tell us that much. And where else will all that traffic go? It's going to go right up into the neighborhood where I live and where many people in this room live. We all know the traffic will be forced to go up State Avenue and Cedar Avenue into the neighborhood, then north on 2nd, north on 3rd. I can tell you the residents of the neighborhood are absolutely against that. The site where this proposal is to be built is landlocked, and we all know that there is no way for the traffic to get out other than to spill into the neighborhood, a neighborhood which is an eclectic mix of young couples, families with children, retirees, renters. Some of them park their cars on the streets because they don't have garages. That's where they park, and there are times where only one car at a time can pass. And somebody mentioned this, Councilman Werble, I think, mentioned, thank you for mentioning that this is right above Potawatomi Park. We all know there are bicycles, pedestrians, people walking their dogs, runners. This neighborhood is not set up to handle the traffic from these proposals. That's simply a fact. And I don't know why the developers are not talking about that more, because that's one of the biggest concerns of the residents. Point number 3. This point was made also, I believe, by Councilman Werble. The Frontier Plan requires the city to give away public land to the developers at no cost. That is bad policy in addition to bad business. Speaking of bad business, I think we're all very much against the $20 million in funding that this developer is seeking. I'm going to leave that for others to make that point. I'm more concerned with the land giveaway. The police station land currently belongs to the city, which means it belongs to the residents of St. Charles. And I can tell you the people do not want you to give away that land. The same developer tried the same thing at the River East Loft project on Indiana and wanted a small parcel as part of that project. And I believe the city council wisely rejected that proposal in the end. We have an expert opinion here that says public land is by definition a community asset owned entirely by the people living in the jurisdiction that holds title to said land. Public land should never be given away free of charge to anyone, whether they be other public or private users or owners. That's from a professor of architecture and urban development from the University of Washington, and it's actually a letter to Mr. Greg Taylor that he received in connection with the River East Loft project. Mr. Taylor is one of the important community voices who prevented the land grab on the other side of Route 64, and of course that makes sense. The police station land is even more precious because it is riverfront land. And not only does the Frontier proposal want to take that land at no cost, we also lose direct access to the river, we lose views, and we lose a big part of the character of our riverfront. Please do not give away that riverfront land to any developer. My final point. open space and green space. Very simply, the Frontier Plan tramples upon the notions of open space and green space. The giant building walls off the neighborhood from the river, and for those of us who live on the east side, we are literally being walled off from direct access to the river and to the river views, and we don't want that. The proposal calls for hardscape. We can see it right there on the rendering. And in this case, about 85,000 square feet of hardscape. Their proposal says that hardscaping was a deliberate design decision, hearkening to iconic classical European town centers. More about the European town centers. That does not sound like St. Charles to me. And hardscape is not open space. I think it was mentioned that our parks are one of our greatest assets. I think of open space and I think of our beautiful parks in this town, not 85,000 square feet of concrete. And I'm sorry, but placing planters and, a row of prairie grass and a few trees is not green space. The Frontier project is a total miss on open space and green space. Those are my 4 points, and I just want to say one more thing. The appearance and massive scale of this project, which will sit on the oldest land in St. Charles, literally the spot where the first settlers of St. Charles landed, does not at all fit in with the character of our city. Nothing in our city looks like that. Don't get me wrong. We all know the space will be developed, something will be built there, and we want that. But the request for concept proposal mentions, quote, historic charm and, quote, scenic locations along the Fox River. The Frontier proposal honors neither. In fact, when we show the rendering to residents who haven't seen it, they're shocked. We actually have community members referring to this as the Vegas plan. I didn't choose that term. I heard that from people. And we do not want the Vegas plan. Plaza San Carlos is not St. Charles. It's not the St. Charles that I know or that many of the longtime residents who are here in this room tonight have grown to love over the many years that they've lived here. It does not at all fit our riverfront. To be clear, I think this plan is a non-starter and it should be rejected outright. It's too big, it's too dense, it's too tall, and it's too ostentatious. There's no way to fix it by shaving a few feet off the top or shaving off 10 hotel rooms or scaling back some of the concrete patio. We don't want this, and it needs to be taken off the table. I'm a bit encouraged by hearing from the Murphy team. They at least are listening to the community. They have more green space. Their building sits on part of the property that allows for access from State Avenue and Cedar Avenue, and it preserves the views. So I'm encouraged by that. I still think it's too big for the space there, but at least it's better than what Frontier has. And I ask this committee, do you want to be remembered as the city leaders who gave away our riverfront land at no cost to pave way for the Vegas plan? I don't think so. I don't think so. I hope that you will choose to join the many, many voters and taxpayers in this town, many of whom are here tonight, who are fighting for our riverfront. We want a development that fits the space, does not overwhelm our neighborhoods, and first and foremost, honors the natural beauty and character and grace of our Fox River. I'll stop there. Please reject the Vegas plan. Help us fight for our riverfront. We want to have something that fits the space and keeps St. Charles great and not changes it into something else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I just want to remind everybody that we 100% read every email that you guys have sent in. Please, when you're coming to the podium, try not to be redundant. If it's information you've already sent, we've probably already read it. I just want to get as many people through here as possible so everybody has a chance to talk. Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Danielle Penman, and I've been a resident of St. Charles for almost 20 years. Prior to coming into tonight's presentations, I had a lot of concerns about the development that was suggested to the city. I probably have a lot more now, but I won't go into it. I'll keep to my script. I just want to know, have all stakeholders truly been actively engaged? I know that this process started prior to the pandemic, but a lot of the conversation happened during the pandemic. And let's be real, I don't think people were engaged during that time. So I don't think that's fair to say that you were truly transparent and communicated effectively during that time. Offering informational sessions does not adequately engage all key stakeholders. Has the city sat down with District 303 leadership to address any negative or positive ramifications from the proposed growth in the center of town that will impact our schools? Eastside school buildings are already facing capacity issues and academic challenges. So it's a major concern when we talk about the traffic patterns in our town. We already have issues with transportation in our district. Has the city considered the increased busing issues that we will be faced with given the increased volume of capacity in residential space in the downtown area? Also, infrastructure costs will increase, requiring initial and ongoing maintenance costs that will fall on the taxpayers. As an East Side resident, I'd like to remind the city that the Charlestown Mall closed in December of 2017 and is yet to be redeveloped. Pheasant Run is a giant eyesore and a safety concern for our community. Given the fact that the police station has recently been vacated and compared to the other buildings, I believe the focus should be on redeveloping these other locations. Resources and funding should be spent on those projects first. Maintaining our riverfront is important for our community, but that does not mean it should redevelop for additional housing and retail space. Has the city thought of all possibilities using the old police station, including allowing the St.Charles Historical Museum to utilize the space? How cool would it be to be able to show and experience the jail cells and kind of, you know, some of the unexpected prisoners that might have been housed there? There's a lot of ways to reutilize the space that we have. I believe more time is needed to evaluate the use of the riverfront space, and the city has an obligation to engage all key stakeholders, including taxpayers, before any financial decisions are made. I'd like to say to the developers, I think that you guys have very valid presentations and ideas. I just don't think that they belong at our riverside and our riverfront. Maybe you'd like to use the mall or Pheasant Run area instead. And I also want to remind everybody, whether you're for or against either of these plans, our city council members brought these forward to us. And April 4th, there is an election. So if you agree or disagree with them, know that you can run for alderman. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to the transparency question.
Everyone, please respect.
I'd like to respond to the transparency question. So I completely disagree with what was said there, just so you know. The hundreds of hours spent by every person on this dais on these projects and getting all the information together, that is just insulting to say it wasn't transparent.
I'm saying, sir, that there's a lot of people in the community that do not know about this, and they're showing up now. So you're entitled to your opinion, I'm entitled to mine, and I'm just voicing mine.
Well, but I didn't insult you. You insulted us.
I'm not meant to insult you.
That's what you did.
Well.
Thank you very much.
Fine.
My name is Dean Demas, and I live at 304 North 2nd Avenue, and I'm a part of the group residents, taxpayers, and voters. And I want to thank the council for giving us a chance to speak. Just a word about the petition. This petition is now up to 600 people. I'm going to give Tracy Conti this packet, which takes it up over 400. The rest is coming in. We can't keep up with getting them copied up. The petition says, we, the undersigned, think the buildings currently proposed at the riverfront are massively inappropriate for this site. We need the city to reconsider smaller, more appropriate options, like the Murphy one, for a complement to the valuable public land at the Fox River site for future generations. So I'll give that to Tracy. The idea of historic preservation is more than just a gleam in somebody's eye. It's actually our historic district runs from the Fox River on the east to 5th Avenue on the west. It goes from Main Street up to Park Avenue. It encompasses 18 landmark sites. It encompasses 32 contributing sites. It also encompasses, for sure, I know of 2 National Register of Historic Places that are in that area. Now, the point being that there is a National Park Service Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of historic properties. These are reflected in our city codes. These are fact. The mayor and the aldermen and the residents of the city of St. Charles need to understand that the standards for the treatment of historic properties as set forth by the National Park Service and the Secretary of the Interior for the United States. The understanding of these standards is important, as the intent of these standards is reflected by our St. Charles city codes. For those who are not aware, the city of St. Charles has a designated historic district bordered, and I already gave the borders. The St. Charles Preservation Commission is charged with protecting the historic integrity of this district. The standards for treatment of historic properties and the city codes they inform are used by this Historic Preservation Commission to approve or disapprove projects presented to them. The following is a brief introduction of 8 of the standards. I will give only 4. It says new construction with boundaries and historic properties. It is possible to add new construction within the boundaries of historic properties if the site conditions allow and if the designs and density and placement of the new construction respect the overall character of the site. According to the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, Standard Number 9 in particular, and the guidelines for rehabilitation of historic buildings, new construction needs to be built in a manner that protects the integrity of the historic buildings and the property's setting. In addition, the following must, not can, must be considered. 4 of the 8, I'll just paraphrase them. Related to new construction, including buildings, driveways, parking lots, landscapes, improvements, and other new features, must not alter the historic character of the property. A property's historic function must be evident even if the use is changed. Number 2, the location of new construction should be considered carefully in order to follow the setbacks of historic buildings and to avoid blocking primary elevations. New construction should be placed away from the site, to the side or to the rear of historic buildings, and must avoid obscuring, damaging, or destroying character-defining features of these building sites. Number 3, protecting the historic site and context of the property, including the degree of open space and the building density, must always be considered when planning new construction on a historic site. Number 4, as with new additions, massing, size, scale, architectural features of new construction on the site of a historic building must be compatible with those of the historic building. Based on these standards that are reflected in the St. Charles City Codes, I believe there is a strong case for our Historic Preservation Commission to disapprove these plans outright.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, ma'am.
I am Beth Patanawara. I live in the Red Gate subdivision. I've lived there about 15 years. My parents live in the Potawatomi neighborhood, and they've lived there since 1993. I'm very concerned about the traffic in the Potawatomi neighborhood based on these 2 plans. I also want to say, as has been said before, we know who we are, and we are not a European design. The Murphy Project architecture needs a lot of work. The fact that the plaza is privately owned is a huge concern of mine. I also thought that the First Street Plaza was supposed to be the center of St. Charles. This seems like it's going to be a lot of competition, and I want everybody really to know that there are people on the west side that are concerned about this project.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Paul McMahon. I also live at 3rd Avenue in Chestnut. To Councilman Slokatis' point, in terms of trust, we know that the Frontier Project, especially the Murphy Project, not so much. It violates the RFQ in terms of height in the historic building. It violates the 2020 comprehensive plan. It violates the recent, the 5-year strategic plan meeting that we had at the Baker Center. At that point, the consensus of the community at that meeting, we had these meetings. You bring in urban planners. You pay urban planners to come in and take the temperature of the community. The community temperature that night was that the Fox River is the crown jewel of St. Charles. We need to preserve and protect the Fox River. We need to do any architecture, would be low-scale architecture, possibly prairie-style architecture. The green space needs to be preserved. In terms of what the woman said a minute ago about transparency, we were led to believe that this was going to be a decision to pick one of these 2 developers and go forward. Now we did find out last week that you're not going to do that, but my point, the point that was made earlier, we are in a historic community. The RFQ talks about honoring the historic community. This does none of that. You've spoken, Alan Watts, Preservation Partners Director, spoke at length about preserving the community sense of space. He was against it. I spoke to Mike Dixon earlier. Mike Dixon's the preeminent architect who everybody loves here in town in terms of all the historic preservation. Both of these architects have spoken against the obnoxiousness and the hugeness of this. The comment that was made at your July 25th meeting was that maybe this opening, maybe this wasn't large enough. Maybe we need to invite, instead of going forward with these two, either these two have to seriously revise their plans or open it up to an architectural firm that does more architecture, more low-rise peristyle architecture that's compatible with the city planning. So I don't think any decision, even if you don't make a decision tonight, I think that opening the process to another architecture firm or two would be very good.
So who led you to believe that we were deciding tonight? You had mentioned that. I was just curious. Because you said transparency, and then you said
yes.
we were led to believe. I'm just curious.
We were led to believe that you had 4 choices in July. You picked 2, you eliminated 2, you had 2 to go forward with. So the 2 to go forward with, one of them was going to be picked tonight to go forward even further. That's just outrageously wrong. The timing on this is wrong. The fact that we've only found out about this in the last 6 weeks, and you've been working on it for a long time, but we didn't know about this at all until the 1st of August. So I understood that this is a project that wants to be hurried through to...
Based on what?
Based on stories that we hear.
Right, exactly.
Tell me about the
okay, but the point is, that's fine. So if you tell me I'm wrong, then I'm
Well, if I may make a point.
Go ahead.
The July 25th meeting, I'll challenge anybody up here to tell me that meeting was transparent. That meeting was changed from 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock. The Zoom link was removed. Public comments was removed from the agenda, and nobody knew what was going on. There was nothing on the city's website. So you can't tell me the July 25th meeting was transparent. It was not. So the only reason why those people were here on July 25th is because I let them know to come here, so they can be involved. So you know what? We didn't do a very good job on July 25th. So that's probably what you're referencing. So just to clarify, everybody should have a chance to speak and participate in this. And this was a great meeting tonight. I think we're doing a great job.
The feedback at the 5-year strategic planning thing was very good. There was probably 60 or 70 people there. We broke into groups. There was a lot of discussion about the future of the city. We pay urban planning groups to come in and ask us our opinion. And at the same time we're tagging the discussion, this is happening here. This is outrageous. This has nothing to do with what was communicated at the 5-year strategic planning meeting. So there's a disconnect between that community conversation or question and answer and this plan.
So I want to challenge that, just so you know, okay? Because I think it's garbage to say that it wasn't transparent. A time was changed of a meeting? Come on. That's a big deal? People can't adjust? I mean, none of anything you just said there. You are the biggest conspiracy theorist when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Why would you remove a Zoom link? Why would you remove a Zoom link? Why would you remove a Zoom link? Answer the question. Wait a minute. Don't talk to staff. Why would you remove a Zoom link?
I didn't remove it, staff.
But you're saying these people want. You don't want people to participate in the meeting. Plain and simple.
No, not true. That's absolutely not true.
Go ahead, sir.
Done?
Yes.
These are tremendous proposals.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Lee Kaloje. I'm at 835 Riding Lane in St. Charles. I've been a St. Charles resident for about 15 years. I've lived both on the east side and the west side. The question I have about the proposals are, I steal a line from a Joni Mitchell song, Big Yellow Taxi, that says, we're paving paradise to put up a parking lot. I have to ask the city council to look inside your souls and see what is the purpose and the need for St. Charles to build a hotel, high-end condos, apartment buildings, along with retail on the pieces of public land that exist right now. It does not exist now. I don't see a need for it. One developer has done a lot of things in Chicago. I grew up in Chicago. My daughter lives at Michigan and Roosevelt. I don't want St. Charles to look like Chicago, okay? The thought of giving away public land is also absolutely absurd and criminal. We have a great resource, natural resource on the river that's of limited space, of tremendous value. If we're going to sell it to real estate people to build, we ought to get a bunch of money for it, because anyone in real estate will tell you that is really expensive land along an extremely limited resource that you can't find anywhere on the Fox River. But I'm dead set against that. In the proposals, we're seeing developers make presentations. Their main purpose in life is to make money for themselves. They are private businesses. They don't need our partnership to do that. I asked the council, have they examined their own park district, the Kane County Forest Preserves, the National Park Service, as to how we could develop that land and return it to natural public use that's representative of our environment and of a limited resource riverfront that we have. One last thing. Earlier this year, I attended a meeting at the Baker Community Center where there were people that mentioned that the Army Corps of Engineers is undergoing a study of the Fox River right now, looking at it from Algonquin to Aurora to take out the dams. If that happens, what does that do to some of these waterfront plans that people are talking about? Are they even aware of it? Have they taken that into consideration? How would that change these presentations? And last thing, we talk about green space. It's one of those words that people use a lot of. I don't see any of it in these presentations. Quite frankly, I see more green space on the fronts of residences in St. Charles than I see in either of the two presentations here this evening. I ask you to take a further look at that. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Jim Nichella, 325 South 8th Street. Thanks for all your work on this, and thanks for the open forum. I guess the question I have, which I know I'm only supposed to provide feedback, but the question I have is, what are we really trying to decide? I thought that, the decisions have already been made over the last couple of years that we're going to rebuild on the old police station property. It went out for proposal based upon the city's criteria, and we have presentations in front of us. It was asked to be creative, unique, be a center of our city. That's what some of the proposals say. And you have the presentations in front of you. Are we really at a place that we're going to, like, stop and not build anything on this property? Because I don't know where everybody's been, but this has been public information for, like, 3 years, if not more. So I just want to at least speak up to the fact that this has been out there for a very long time. I thought we were here to talk about what options we needed, and I think you got a creative proposal, and you have one that is pretty much status quo, and you have to decide what is it that we want for our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Al Watts. I'm with Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley. Our address is at 8 Indiana Avenue. First of all, I want to clear up a couple of things. The gentleman a minute ago, I believe, quoted me. First of all, I wanted to make it clear that the Preservation Partner is not opposed to any of these projects at all. We don't take a position. We're really more here to educate, not take a position on the project. And also, he may have suggested that I was an architect. I'm definitely not an architect. So several people have already talked about the historic district and how that all works. And what I want to do is bring in a little bit of application to that, to add to that. So a couple things. First of all, the city's historic district is a significant asset. We all understand that, but why is it a significant asset? First of all, as I've mentioned to you all before, financially, there's economic studies show, Donovan Ripkema, who is an economist, has found that historic districts tend to have higher property values than districts that, or any areas that are not historic. They also tend to bring in more people. More people tend to visit and visit longer in historic districts. The second reason why cities generally have a historic district is this concept of a sense of place. A historic district offers this continuity and connection and also that character, such that the historic district, there's a historic district in Geneva, there's a historic district in Naperville, there's a historic district in Chicago. You know that you're in each one of these different ones because they look totally different. That is the point. That is why we have historic districts. Now, to apply the standards, somebody brought them up, which was great. I didn't have to bring them to you. The municipal center is the focal point of St. Charles. I mean, it's on the logo of the St. Charles city. So it's definitely the focal point. And whatever is going to be put near it needs to not detract from that. Both proposals have elements that are much greater in mass and scale than the municipal center. The Murphy Development's proposal has a significant buffer, however, between it and the municipal center, which respects the municipal center's prominence in the city. The Frontier Development proposal, more or less, it's similar, it's close to it, almost connects to the municipal center, which causes its greater mass and scale to interfere with the municipal center. I'm going to give you a crude demonstration. So think of this as the municipal center, and the Frontier Development is kind of like my face. It's like here, okay? But what Murphy Development is doing is that this is the municipal center, and my face is over here. So I'm much further away. It provides this buffer, and it keeps this much more prominent. It doesn't get lost, which it may get lost in a building that is of a similar size to the municipal center next to it. Now, can a building be right next to or even connect to the historic building here and work? Absolutely. It can't do that. What it can't do is to eliminate it and make it somewhat invisible. So that's just basically what I wanted to explain and kind of bring that to your attention. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. So, is there anybody outside of the City Hall chambers that needs to speak? I didn't receive a list, so I don't know if there's people in the other rooms right now. No, there's not. Is there anybody on Zoom right now that would like to make a public comment?
Yes, we have one public comment from Michael Dixon that said the band shell is a problem with the sun and the eyes facing west. I believe he's talking about Frontier's proposal. Having designed several outdoor theaters, you never have people facing into the sun in the evening. And then we also have, I believe...
He's gone now.
Oh, he was gone now.
Yeah.
We did have Mike Smith, but he appears to have left.
So there's nobody else left for public comment then?
I do not believe so. If you are on Zoom and you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand and we will unmute you.
Just wait about 15 seconds here.
I don't see any hand raises, so.
Okay. Well, with that being said, listen, at the end of the day, we want to have these open forums so we can hear from everybody, everyone's input. If there's additional questions outside of this meeting, you can email any one of us up here. You can email, there's a website, an email address, cd@stcharlesil.gov. Once again, this meeting will continue onto the 14th. There's no decision that is being made tonight, regardless of what people may have said. Once again, I appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate Murphy Development Group. I appreciate Frontier Development in their presentations. And with that, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
So move.
Moved by Wirball, seconded by Lencioni. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.